Lightning incense. Hey y'all, happy Wednesday. Today we have a lot to discuss, a lot to go over when it comes to Atlantis. Today we're going to get back into Atlantis and Amara and stuff like that. So I'm actually really excited. Hold on, give me 1 second. Okay. Ouch, shit. Okay. So today we're going to continue the conversation over Atlantis. Hey, Memory. And we're basically going to be speaking about what a temple is and how you create a temple. We'll talk about the golden age of Atlantis. We'll talk about Amara again, and we'll start talking about the process of her being chosen by the crystal flame. We'll talk about what sacred separation is. We'll do a day in the life with her as well. Hi, Irie. Hi, Spiritual Key. We'll do a day in the life with her as well and talk about some of like the practices and rituals that she did as well, just because these are things that you can do in today's time. I've even adapted some to my last couple days, and it's been going well. Then we'll talk about the fall of Atlantis, how long before the fall she actually warned them. We'll talk about the sacred betrayal and some of the things that she had to go through during that time. And then we'll also talk about how she defended herself and stuff like that. Okay, so that's basically going to be the basis of that episode today. I want to give people a little bit of time to get in here, though. So for those of y'all who are on here, I had a remembrance, and I think I talked about it a couple episodes back, where I was saying that in a previous life, I was like a high priestess, and who is now my brother in this lifetime. Basically, he wasn't doing what I told him, what I was asking him to do. And I basically led him astray, and he jumped off a cliff and he unalived himself. So we've been stuck like as a family in like this karmic loop. And what I realized in these last couple of days through sitting with my oversoul, sitting in stillness and everything, is that I had that story wrong. So we talked about it in like the beginning of one of the episodes before. So I want to talk about it again because I realized because of that situation, I have been self-blaming for at least 3 incarnations. And what actually happened in the situation was not that I told him something and he wasn't listening to me. So I tricked him into believing that he had immortality and he jumped off this cliff. That actually did not happen. What happened instead was that I activated him too early. Meaning that in the previous life, I was a part of like a priestess temple. And his mom was one of my sisters, right? One of my priestess sisters. And she trusted me a lot. And I could see into different timelines, timelines that were to come and also timelines that haven't happened yet because I was a seer. And so because I was a seer, I could see into different timelines. And I saw something in her son. And basically, I awakened him too quickly and his ego got a hold of him. And because his ego got a hold of him, he believed in me very radically, but he also believed in his flame. He believed in his energy very radically, which caused him to think that he was like he could not be harmed in this physical body, So what he did is he jumped off this rock that was at the top of this cliff, and he did not pass away immediately. What happened instead is that it took him a while to pass away. And not when I say a while, I mean like a couple hours. So it took him a little second to pass away. And his last words to me was that it was not my fault and that he just was not ready. Okay. The reason why I was self-blaming over these last 3 incarnations is because I felt this urgency at that time to wake people up. And because I could see into future timelines, I felt like it had to happen right then, right there. And so I chose the wrong path. Okay, basically is what I'm saying. I chose the wrong path. I woke this kid up too quick. He ended up dying because of it. His mom, who was my high priestess sister, ended up spending the rest of her life in grief, and she's my mom in this lifetime. But she spent the rest of her life in grief. She pulled away from the high priestess temple, and she basically used to just roam around and grieve her son and sing to the ocean. And because that was like a practice we used to do back in the day. But she basically abandoned everything that she knew because she was so devastated by the grief. And then me, myself, I was also devastated. And I went into stillness. And when I went into stillness, it was because I decided to turn off my seership, meaning like, this whole entire life incarnation, I have kind of struggled with seeing in my head. I cannot see anything in my head. However, I've always been very psychic and I can feel things with my body. And that is because the version of me from a previous timeline or a previous lifetime turned off her seership. The reason why she did that is because she felt like she could not trust herself and trust her gifts anymore. And so with her doing that, what she was trying to learn in this silence, because she took like a vow of silence and all of this stuff. And what she was trying to learn to do is how to read through feeling, read through your body, because you can be tricked with what you see, you can be tricked with what you hear, but you can never be tricked with how your body is responding to something, because your body is 90% of who you are. So she was trying to learn how to read with her entire being instead of relying on clairvoyance totally, right? And that's very interesting to me because my whole entire life, I have been able to read people very quickly and I don't understand it. And a lot of people will tell me like, oh, your gift is really strong. Your gift is just different than other people's. And I did not understand that because I would feel like I'm at a disadvantage because I cannot see anything up here. Like when I say that I see something, it's not that I see it. It's like I'm imagining something instead of like actually seeing it. So she developed in that silence basically this soul to soul coherence where she can read people's energy by merging, like briefly merging with their energy, and she could pick up everything and they feel really quickly. She also developed the skill of clairaudience, which is one of my strongest gifts. She developed that sense, but clairaudience is not just hearing voices in your head, it's actually hearing the tone underneath the words that people are saying, and picking up the energy behind the words that people are saying, which I thought was interesting because I've always been able to tell when somebody means what they say or when somebody is speaking truth and when somebody is not speaking truth. And then I think the last thing that she was able to do was clear empathy. And clear empathy is when you can pick up on other people's feelings and what's happening inside of their body. But she also had that with rooms, meaning like she could go to ancient sites or she could go to places where trauma has happened and she could tap into the memory of that place, which I haven't seen that happen for me, but I do feel collective trauma sometimes. So I thought that was interesting because I previously believed that I had caused this person's death, and now I understand I did not cause his death. I mean, I caused his death by activating him too early, but it was a choice that he made, and I was forgiven for that choice, but I just couldn't let it go. Not only that, I was dating a man who was from the Black Flame Temple, which is like shadow walkers, death walkers, people who work in the what we would consider to kind of be like the underworld. And his flame balanced out my flame, but because me and him came into union in this incarnation too quickly, we were noticed by this inversion energy, and he had to basically forget who he was, forget his flame, and descend into distortion until I could wake up fully again or till another time came. So I also felt guilt for that as well. So this week has been very interesting spiritually. I feel like I have been doing a lot of work. I've been coming to a lot of realizations. So it's been kind of fun. It's been kind of interesting because I feel like my gift has or the way that I've been seeing my gift has changed a little bit, because at first I thought I was at a disadvantage, and now I understand that she was trying to teach herself how to feel truth, So I just wanted to share that. Hey, Lisa. Who else is in here? Hey, Chloe. All right, y'all. So we're going to get started with Atlantis. So the last two episodes, we kind of were setting the foundation. So in the last episode, we talked about the soul's journey in this incarnation. I'm actually in real time, right before I got hopped on here, I'm working on a course for flame bearers. So if you're interested in this information, stuff like that, soon I will have a course that y'all can work through. That is going to give you like the education and stuff behind this outside of what I'm doing here as well. Okay. So I'm working on that in real time. I've been working on it since this past weekend. So I have like the introduction, I have the lesson, the first lesson. I actually have all the lessons mapped out, but I don't have the content that goes within those lessons. So I've done the brainstorming, I've like laid it out in its modules and stuff, but I've only finished and I ain't even finished the introduction, but I've started the introduction. I've started lesson 1. So I'm going to be working on that on the next couple of weeks. Okay. So we talked about the path to remembrance. We talked about the path of sovereignty last time. And the time before that, we just were basically defining things for Amara. So today, again, if you weren't on when I initially started, we're going to talk about what a temple is. We're going to talk about the golden age of Atlantis. We'll talk about the crystal flame and how it chose her, sacred separation, day in the life of Amara, and some practices and rituals that she did. We'll also talk about breath, because breath is really, really important, and we don't necessarily understand the use of our breath. We'll also talk about how long before Atlantis fell, she kind of warned them the sacred betrayal, which was the many ways that they attacked her and the many ways that people kind of betrayed her. And then we'll talk about how she struggled to defend herself after that. Hey, pretty. Okay, so first, we'll start with definition. And the first 111 on the clock, new beginnings, period. I don't know if y'all know, but today is a new moon and it's in Cancer. And Cancer is at home with the moon. So it's a very, very potent energy if you're trying to manifest something long-term, security, anything like that. Whatever manifestation that you're going to do today, I would do it with water, meaning like write out an invocation, like pour some water into a cup or to a glass, speak your intention over that water, set it in the moonlight, drink it the next day. But it's a really, really great time for you to manifest because Cancer likes being in the moon, because it's the only sign that is ruled by the moon. So you're welcome. All right. Okay. So the only definition that I have today is a temple. And I feel like I've talked about temples a lot, but I feel like I have not went into the definition of that. And I think that some people might assume that when I say temple, I mean a physical place that you go and you know, like a church is a temple. Like, so I kind of want to like clear that up real quick before we jump into what we're talking about. Okay. So a temple is not just a building. It is a field of sacred coherence. It's a space where the soul can remember itself without distortion. So even when I'm talking to you guys, I'm creating a temple. I'm creating a space for you guys to come and to learn and to grow and to love and all of that. That's why I always do. I like my incense. I say my reverence in this space. Like, that's how you create a temple. All right. But it's turning your body and your presence into a home for the divine. Okay. A true temple holds frequency. It mirrors truth. It dissolves mimic and protection. It invites remembrance, not performance. And it builds through intention, through clarity, and through vibration. Okay. So there are kind of 4 pillars that we can create. And this first one is through sound. Actually, there's more than 4, but these are the ones that we can create through tone. Okay. Like the tone that we hold. Also, our frequency is the tone, right? So, when I say that you build in temples, it's not just with walls. Again, it's about resonance. All right. So sound is the universal carrier of creation, and sound lays the foundation. So when you speak, when you sing, when you tone, or when you breathe with intention, you are casting grid lines of sacred space. And sound opens timelines and memories and chambers in your body. Your heart chamber is open by saying ah, right? You release with shh. Okay. Ha opens your throat. Ha opens your throat. Right. So there's sacred sounds that kind of go with these chambers, and also the sacred sounds that are associated with the chakra as well go with these chambers. So as you say them, or as you chant them, you're opening up these energy centers which hold memory. Okay. So you literally build energetic architecture with your voice. So every sacred site that we have begin with a sound echo. Okay, so next is your voice, and your voice is sound given identity and embodiment. So your voice is your flame made audible. When you speak in truth, you calibrate the space around you. So it's so important for you to speak your truth because, again, you create a temple around you. The vibration of your voice can heal, it can recalibrate, or it can destroy distortion. And that's why there's so much suppression in women when it comes to us using our voice and having our autonomy, also with children as well, because children are very, very wise. Okay. Voice creates a hollowed space where others can return to their soul. So again, we're not just talking about when you use your voice, you're talking. It's more about you are building something when you speak. Every time that you speak, you are building something. Every word that comes out of your mouth creates an energy around you that moves you through timelines and dimensions. Okay. It's not that you're in one timeline at a time. You are in multiple timelines. And that's why we have the Mandela effect and all those things, is because your consciousness kind of bounces in between timelines. Okay. And that happens with what you eat, what you do, what you speak, all of those things. Okay. So that's your voice. Your breath gives tone life. Okay. Each inhale draws divine codes into your temple. And you can breathe from 3 places. You don't just breathe from one place. You can breathe from your crown. You can breathe from your heart. You can breathe from your womb. Okay. 3 states of consciousness. Okay. Thoughts and channels, message and stuff like that come from your crown. Okay. But you also have heart, and you also have your womb, which all have their own electromagnetic field, by the way. Well, your brain is electric, your heart and your womb are magnetic. Okay. So tone is with each inhale, you draw in divine codes into your temple. Each exhale, you release mimic, fog, and distortion. So breath anchors the temple into your body. Okay. It helps to make you an altar. And breath is the priestess kind of behind the sound. And then the last one is tone. And tone is the purity and alignment of your presence. Tone is how other people feel you, even when you are silent. Hey, Jayla. It holds your flame truth beyond words, and your tone builds temples by creating an undeniable field of coherence. Okay. So when your tone is clear, others remember themselves just by being near you. And tone is like the living stone of the temple. Okay. So how do you create a temple? You speak your truth clearly, you breathe with intention, you carry your voice in full flame tone, and you move and sit in coherence with yourself. Okay. What the reason why this is important is because we are living temples. Thank y'all. We are living temples. Okay. And people come to us as living temples to heal or to reveal or to activate or to release or to restore. So you become the space for other people to step into. So you want to make sure that you living in your truth, you speaking your truth, because that is how you embody your own specific resonance. All right. So you can also make a temple in space, because so that was temple with the tone. This is temple in space, which is a physical temple. And this is created in a physical location. So your house is also a temple, and it holds consciousness as well. You can consecrate it by ritual, by intention, by alignment. You can use crystals or sacred geometry to make crystal grids to align your home as well. Fire, water, and you also can anoint objects. You can create an altar, because altars are basically hearths or homes for these type of temples, which is and what I mean by that is, like, you can literally, when I say anoint an object, I mean like you can create an object that has a specific purpose. And what I mean by that is this. Okay. I enchanted this. I put an invocation over this. And every time that I look at this, or I come up every single morning, I look at this when I come up, I've created a temple out of it, meaning it holds energy, it holds space, it holds purpose for me. Right. And you can kind of take it with you if you want to, but I just kind of keep it up here. But I enchanted that with an invocation about abundance. Okay. So these temples anchor subtle energies into Earth's grid. And then you have a living temple, the living embodiment temple, which is your body. Okay. So when your body becomes the altar, it becomes the keeper and the vessel. This is full oversoul embodiment where every gesture, breath, and gaze is encoded with remembrance. Movement becomes sacred, eating becomes an offering, touch becomes a blessing, and the body is the temple, the flame is the offering. Okay, then you have temple of silence. Which is when you create a sacred stillness, often in nature, in a dream space, or in retreat. No words are spoken in the space, but the field of devotion is so strong that silence becomes the architecture. This is kind of like when I tell y'all that when y'all go to meditate, always meditate in the same spot. And every time that you come back to that place after you have meditated, it's going to be very easy for you to get into that meditative state in that spot because you've built up the energy around it. What I'm really saying is that you've created a temple in that space. Okay. So the energy matches what it is that you're trying to do. Okay. It's almost like having like altars in your home, and each altar has a different meaning. Like some people have like an altar that they go and talk to their ancestors to. Other people have a money altar. Other people have, you know what I'm saying? So you can kind of create these temples, these altars wherever you go and in different ways. Okay. This is specifically a temple of silence. But it's an inner temple that is built through undisturbed presence and frequency holding. And stillness speaks in tone. Okay. It speaks in stone as well. Then you have a temple for your dreams, which is constructed in the astral or interdimensional spaces, which I like to call the liminal space. I have a place that I go to if I'm ever in the astral plane and I feel unsafe. I have like this jungle house that I created in my mind that I go to. I also have a crystal city too that I be going to sometimes. These are places you can kind of create either in your head or you've been there before and you just recreating it from memory. But it's built by intention and oversoul agreement. In this jungle house that I have, I usually speak to my guides in that, like only my guides can come into that place. Okay. So it's built by intention and oversoul agreement. Dream temples allow soul groups to meet, initiate, and heal in altered realms. And dreams are not fiction. They're flame chambers and other veils. Then you have a temple by relationship, which is when two or more beings hold coherent tone together and they can create a field that becomes a living temple. And this happens in sacred union. It happens in soul mirrored friendships and aligned mentorship as well. Meaning like the reason why like therapy or mentorship or stuff like that works is because y'all create a temple together, especially if it's somebody that you trust. And that's why I feel like some people are so devastated when they get a new therapist or when they get a new mentor, because they built up that temple together and they felt comfortable in that space and they've shared so much in that space that they feel like something has been taken away from them. And in all reality, energetically, it kind of has. Okay. In these spaces, words heal, love sanctifies, and memory returns. The relationship becomes in the grid lines. So love can also be a sacred space. And then the last one is temple by service, which is built when you serve from integrity, presence, and devotion. You're not just teaching to inform, you're transmitting to restore flame. Okay. Every session, every reading, every client becomes a temple moment. And this is priestess work. Every act of clear service is a consecration. And that is what we have been doing for the last 10 weeks. Okay. Creating a temple together, a place where we can learn, we can grow, and all of those things. Okay. So I hope you guys understand what a temple is. And I hope you start to incorporate that in your daily life. Okay. All right. So let's talk briefly about the golden age of Atlantis. And I think we've hit on this before, but since the last two episodes, we weren't really talking about Atlantis. I just kind of want to bring this back to the forefront before I talk about a couple concepts and stuff that are kind of to come in this episode. So, the word, like it was a golden world. It was a frequency temple. It was a living harmonic between earth and the stars. Atlantis was born, like I said, as a dream in between worlds. And Atlantis was not originally a physical empire the way later civilizations became. It began as a frequency field and it was seeded with higher 5D and 6D densities. Okay. There were specific places on earth that Atlantis was physical, which we talked about in the previous episodes, but for the main part, or for the most part, it was a frequency field. And that's why I say we fell into physicality. We fell. Okay. It was a co-creation between Earth's heart grid and the celestial soul families, which are the Syrians, the Lyrans, the Venetians, and the Pleiadians. It was a living template for how spirit and matter could dance together in sacred union. And it was never meant to dominate the earth at all. It was meant to be like a garden of star-seeded light where souls could anchor divine templates into crystalline matter. Okay. So like I said, it was a harmonic civilization, meaning it lived in harmony. And in its purest phase, Atlantis was a crystal city, but the crystals were alive. They were sentient. They were singing in resonance with Earth's heart. Temples of sound, color, water, and light were their main structure. Okay. So we just talked about how you create a temple. So it's through frequency. So sound, color, water, and light were the main structures. Energy was drawn directly from Earth's crystalline core and stellar alignments. So it wasn't like fossil fuel or extraction or anything like that. It was coming from the earth. It was coming from the energy that kind of naturally exists around us. And I don't know if you guys have ever studied Nikola Tesla, but he was the guy who basically talked a lot about free energy. And really what it was is that he had access to Atlantean knowledge. Okay. But he talked about free energy. And one time he tricked JP Morgan into giving him a loan for what he considered to be like radio stations. And what he did instead is he built this huge temple, and it kind of looked like a water tower in a way. And it was really, really tall, and it went like 170 feet into the ground. Right. And so what he was trying to do was lift vehicles, lift things using this free energy. And he actually was successful in it. But when JP Morgan found out in 1901, he knocked that shit the fuck down. So he basically, robbed the rich for the poor. But they knocked it down, and that's why we hear more about Thomas Edison than we do about Nikola Tesla, even though he's the one who taught Thomas Edison about concurrent currents, which is why we have electricity and helicopters and literally any fucking technology. But we don't hear about him because he basically said, fuck the rich. So yeah. So they used the energy from Earth's crystalline core, and places, for example, like the pyramids that have structures underneath them that are energy grid, those are energy centers. Those were healing centers. Okay. And that's why they have those coils underneath the pyramids, which they just discovered. Bullshit. Anyways, but also souls communicated through telepathy, through tone, and through harmonic resonance, not through spoken word alone. And what I mean by that is the alpha beta system was created because these humans were created who were more mental than they were heart coherence, which means that we spoke to each other heart to heart. But because they created these white skinned folks, and not all of them white skinned folks, because they also created brown bodies as well that are disconnected from source energy, which means they disconnected from their heart. They cannot communicate with us through telepathy because they make you think that telepathy comes from up here. Telepathy is heart to heart. Okay, so we created the alpha beta system. We're the alpha beta system, so that we can, the alphabet beta system, alphabet, so that we can communicate with them. Then we became reliant on it. But we used to be beings who spoke from soul to soul telepathy, meaning we spoke from our heart space to our heart space. All right. And it's really trippy when you feel your oversoul speak to you from your heart space, because I don't know, I've been a medium these last 2 years, a professional medium, and I hear from here. When I'm talking to y'all family members, I hear it up here through clairaudience. But when my oversoul speaks to me, she speaks to me from my chest, which is just, anyways, when you understand it, you understand it. But we didn't speak with word alone, okay? The cities floated on light matrices, so they were more akin to the plasma fields and the organic architecture, which is, again, we went through all this before. Life was not built on ownership, but stewardship. And to live in Atlantis was to be a guardian of beauty and balance and remembrance. So not everybody was an Atlantean, okay, which is something we talked about before. The Golden Age was this era that lasted a long span of time. We might translate that to several thousand Earth years. But it was a time when souls incarnated with full memory intact, where Earth grids pulsed in harmony with the galactic stargates. Humanity's vibration was above polarity. So it was close to more of a unified consciousness. And then fear, greed, and domination had not entered into the planetary field yet. Okay. Atlantis in the beginning was a living Eden. And we talked about the Eden codes and stuff before. But a consciously chosen star-born Eden designed by sovereign beings who were trying to weave spirit into matter. Okay? So That's the golden age. And the reason why we got to understand that is because we're about to go into what was happening before the sacred betrayal and stuff, all of that happened. Because it's equivalent to, I think, 10 to 15,000 years. Is she told them that the distortion was creeping in 10 to 15,000 years before. Okay. So that means that the golden age lasted more than that. All right. So we're going to get back into Amara and talk about how she was chosen by the crystal flame itself. Okay. So the choosing of the crystal flame is a cosmic ceremony before incarnation and before form, before names. The crystal flame is a conscious living intelligence, a being of pure divine order that contains harmonic structure of the universe, the memory of all soul lineages, the codes in ascension, creation, and restoration, and is chosen by resonance. So what happens when you're being chosen is that a soul strand stands in front of this flame, which if you've ever seen the movie Soul, all right. So they stand in front of the flame, and it's not physical, but it's energetic. So this happens on a plane kind of beyond time, and in this place that they call the chamber of remembering, or the flame mirror. Okay. So the flame sings into the soul's field, and it scans for alignment with its codes. And it looks for purity of intent. It looks for soul maturity. It looks for memory of the original light. And it looks for the capacity to hold fire and tenderness together. Okay. So you got to be able to hold both. All right. If the soul's song harmonizes with the flame, then the flame will respond. So when the flame responds, it doesn't respond with words. It responds with light, sound, and form. And it enters into the soul's field, which is a slow, sacred embedding. So it kind of becomes one or merges with it a little bit and becomes a part of that being's essence across timelines, meaning that it's a part of your soul. Now, this is the moment that Amara was chosen, and she didn't seek the flame. She was the frequency of it before she even knew its name. Okay. Meaning like she just was, like she was created for it. I don't know how to explain that. Okay. What changed in her after she was chosen, though, is that her body became a vessel of living crystalline light. Her voice began to carry codes that opened stargates. Her aura activated the rose grid wherever she walked. And her dreams were connected to timelines across dimensions. Okay. But it also meant sacrifice for her, which means that her life became sacred territory. She wasn't owned or anything, but she was offered. Okay. She became unreadable to these lower forces, but also incomprehensible to the people around her, meaning that her frequency was so high, a lot of people could not perceive her. A lot of people could not understand her. It's almost like when you talking to people, like when you on your healing journey and you've moved so far to the left that sometimes you go back and you talk to your grandparents, or you talk to somebody who is stuck or seeped in distortion or seeped in the matrix, and you're trying to have a conversation with them and they don't understand what the fuck you're talking about. That it was like that all the time for her. And eventually she had to withdraw from form to protect her flame. Okay. So the choosing of her wasn't really about worthiness. It was about readiness, and it was about return. And now that same thing is choosing us again. And that's why we need to talk about it. Okay. Not just one of us, but many of us. Okay. So it could be choosing you right now, depending on where your resonance is and your capacity for light or love and your capacity to remember. Okay. So if your body trembles, if your heart flares with emotion when I say that, you may be standing in front of that flame right now. Okay. So next I want to talk about sacred separation, right? Because we talked about Amara being incomprehensible to other people. So a lot of times she had to go into separation, or she had to kind of be by herself. But she didn't live a life of loneliness. She understood that separation was sacred. Okay. So she lived in profound connection, but not always in companionship, meaning she didn't have a lot of friends. She did have a group of friends, which I think we talked about when we talked about her in the flame episode. And she did have some love interest too, which we can get into some tea about that if y'all want to. We can get into some tea about that as well, because she did have, like, I think she was dating somebody who was from like Sirius, or like a star being or something. But she was surrounded by light, she was surrounded by memory and guardians and codes, but few could truly see her essence because of how high vibrational she was. So she was never truly alone, but she was more so unreachable by other people. Okay. Um, she walks them amongst other people, but she carried a frequency that was so refined and so precise. Like when she speaks to me, the first time she spoke to me, she scared the shit out of me because I don't think I've ever had energy that, like, I don't even know how to explain it, like that pure. It almost felt too intense, and I realized that I felt her my entire life, and that is what I've been scared of my entire life, because I thought that it was too much energy, you know. um but it's very precise, and not a lot of people actually codes actually match her or even come close to what her codes are. Okay. So her circle was small, but it was radiant. She had the royal guard, who were soulbound protectors, which we talked about that before. She had three rings of beings who surrounded her. They were the keepers of times, of breath, and of flame. She played with children a lot, dolphins, temple singers, those who are kind of still innocent, because they could reach her more easily than somebody who had been steeped in distortion. You know, that's why I say kids are sacred. Kids are sacred. When they come in, they're pure love energy until y'all touch them, until y'all do what y'all be doing to them. You know, they're pure love energy. So they could reach her a lot easier than adults could. Many adults, especially as the distortion grew, found her intimidating or confusing, or felt like she was very unreal. And she was loved, but she was just often misunderstood. Okay. So a lot of people who feel loved but often misunderstood carry her codes. All right. She belonged to the flame more than she belonged to the world, though, meaning like her duty was to hold the flame, stay true to herself, authenticity and stuff like that, more than it was to the people around. Even though she was very compassionate, she represented unconditional love, which is the rose grid, you know, unconditional love, divine union, and things like that. If it came to be a decision between us or protecting the flame, she gonna protect the flame. You know what I'm saying? Because we get to choose, we get free will and all of those things. So after choosing, Amara became after she was chosen, she became a living temple, and that meant that she was surrounded by romantic partners, or had soul unions in other planes, not in the plane that she existed in. Okay, which is what I told y'all. The guy, I know about 3 people from her incarnation, but as Ma'arana was birthed, which is who my energy is, there's also another one from the Black Flame Temple who appears as well. So she often withdrew into crystal chambers, underwater sanctums, or dream temples, and she communed more with the stars and stargazed and inner flame intelligence. That was kind of like her daily life. She never was without purpose, though, and she never was unloved by the light. Her solitude was not like an exile, it was just devotion. Like, she was devoted to the flame. She had to do things the way that she had to do things. So with her being chosen by the flame, she didn't choose it. She did not choose this life. She was chosen by resonance, which means she had to sacrifice a lot when it came to connection. Okay. So did she feel alone sometimes? Yes, but there were moments, especially as Atlantis fractured, when she felt the ache of being the only one who remembered the song, meaning like she was the only one who remembered what the original purpose of Atlantis was supposed to be. She wept, but not just for herself, but for all of the people who forgot, because we were living in harmony, and then this distortion creeped in. People became egomaniacs, polarity. We got seeped in polarity, and people just started to forget, right? And her job was to hold the flame, and they knew that this was a possibility. It's just that it was heartbreaking for her when it started to happen. Okay. But even then, the flame comforted her. It pulsed in her chest, it sang in her bones. And when she dreamed, she stood in the halls of light with others like her, bathing the timeline braids. Okay. So what you have to understand about this is that she walks through a lot of us right now, and we could be feeling the same ache. Okay. But what you got to understand is the ache is sacred. To be here, but not fully be here, or to love deeply and rarely connect with other people. Okay. To feel like you're of service to a mission that a lot of people don't understand. Okay. And if you feel like that, what you need to understand is you are not broken. Sometimes it just means that you're remembering the way that she lived, or over souls like her. And so it's not really loneliness, it's luminous. Like it really is a sacred path, you know? So many of us, the reason why many of us forget now, and it's actually a bunch of different reasons, because of the main reason is that we fell in consciousness when the grid collapsed, right? But there's also this global amnesia spell that a lot of us have been underneath. And so I want to talk about that for a second. It's the reason why we forgot Atlantis and Tartaria, and the reason why we are told that our gifts are not real. And it's because we're all underneath this spell. So, many of us are underneath this global amnesia spell, and this is not just forgetfulness. It is a deliberate distortion field cast over Earth's grids, Earth's consciousness, Earth's memory body to sever humanity from this divine origin. And it is multidimensional awareness and sovereignty. That is what they're trying to keep us from, is the multidimensional awareness and sovereignty, right? So the spell, it is a frequency distortion engineered to disrupt the human soul's ability to recall past lives, star origin, and soul contracts. And it severs connection between Earth's grids in the higher realms, which means it kind of cuts us off from the rest of the star lineages, the star frequencies, the everything. Okay. It hides the truth of civilizations like Atlantis, Lemuria, Tartaria, the Venetian Earth, and even Eden. And it locks souls into a loop of reincarnation, trauma, and forgetfulness. Okay. It replaces our organic memory with false timelines, meaning that they included timelines that did not really exist. And we have them in our history books, right? They wrote themselves into our history as well, but also false science, false history. All right. Now, okay. I just want to make sure I say this because I have a theory, and I'm going to tell y'all what my theory is, and I don't want to hear nothing about it. I'm going to tell y'all what my theory is though. Okay. But anyway, so they replace organic memory with false timelines, false science, and false history. And this spell isn't magic. It's not like magic in the sense of how we see it in fairy tale sense. It's not that, y'all. It's technology. It's a technology of frequency of trauma and control. Okay. It is technology. It is not that they have fucking magic wands, because they don't have access to the magic because they don't have a soul. So they need technology because technology mimics what we naturally can do. So it's not like this sinister fucking thing where they were magicians and they can't, like, no, it's quite the fucking opposite. It is the technology. It is a technology. Okay. So how did they do this? How did they get us underneath this global amnesia spell? What you got to understand is that it did not happen overnight. It took them thousands of years, and they used multiple layers of this frequency manipulation being one part of it. And frequency manipulation was a distortion of Earth's Schumann resonance. They changed Earth's tone, which we talked about in a couple episodes back, right? So they distorted Earth's Schumann resonance, okay? They inverted crystal grid nodes, so they turned healing centers into trauma sites, right? They would slaughter the people or whatever the hell on Earth's crystalline nodes because it creates trauma in that space. And that's why I don't know if y'all have ever seen, somebody had went to Stonehenge before they knocked it down, and they had a drone and they was flying it above, and you could see that there was some type of ritual or something that was done on top of the stone because it was like seeped in BLOOD, right? So yes, all the episodes are on YouTube, y'all. So they will take these sites that sit on these crystal nodal points, right? And we talked about the nodal points when we was talking about the grids, and they'll turn them into trauma sites. Okay, like Iran, Palestine. Anyways, I digress. But also they introduce false sound codes through certain languages, architecture, and media as well. Like LA, yes, LA is in part of the original template, and it was a creative hub. It's a creative crystal node, and what they've done is distorted it with fame and idolization of people and things like that. But yes, LA is a huge, huge creative hub. Okay. So they introduced these false sound codes through certain languages, which means that English, the reason why they were trying to make English the primary language for everybody, 144 on my clock, which is the 144,444 on y'all clock, some of y'all. But the reason why they wanted English to be the main language is because everywhere, and that's why most places speak English, but Americans only speak English, is because English is a language that is inverted from tone. When we used to speak, like the Lemurians in Atlantis and all of them used to speak, every single word held a specific resonance and a specific tone, and it meant something. It caused healing. It caused all of these things. But when they made English, English is a dead language. Okay. But also they did that through architecture, meaning like on some of these crystal nodal points, they put the military bases. And the reason why they put the military bases is because they can change the energy of that site. And what they will do, the reason why a lot of our government architecture is in sacred geometry, meaning like the Pentagon and things like that, is because they're changing the energy of that space with the architecture. But also media, because media, they can feed you anything through media. I tell you, they can trick you with what they show you, right? Even with the riots in LA, they're calling it a riot when those people are peacefully protesting. But then they show you videos of people throwing bricks and stuff onto these police cars. Those are agents. Those are agents. Okay, they've done it multiple times, and it's their people. And then they get people riled up, and then people want to go join, and then now they have a problem on their hands. Now they get you to buy into it because they're like, this is already happening, and people are saying, yeah, I should go out there and join. And they go out there with the wrong impression because they've been given misinformation. Okay, they own all of the media, all of them, and that's why they don't like places and spaces like TikTok. Why? Because they cannot control it. Okay. But also through trauma-based suppression. And what I mean by that is wars, is genocide, and is systemic oppression targeting soul lineages with memory. All right. Mass events designed to create collective shock, like back in the day when they would do their conquest, they would burn down libraries, like the Library of Alexandria, like the libraries in, what do you call them? Aztec, Mayan, whatever. All of those. And all of those had memories of Atlantis. So actually, Plato was not the only person who wrote about Atlantis. The only reason why we only know about Atlantis through Plato is because he categorized it as philosophical fiction, right? So they allowed him to keep it because he didn't say that this is a truth. He said that this was fiction, right? But that was his way of preserving it. When our reality is that there was records of Atlantis in all of the ancient civilizations, all the indigenous civilizations. They just burnt them down when they went on a conquest, or they're being held with the 54 miles worth of scrolls that they have at the Vatican. Okay. But also colonial conquest, quest, and temple destruction, which is all of the temples that we know, Hercules temple, Aphrodite's temple, all of that shit, even the Vatican, because the Vatican is a temple, used to be owned by the Sibyls, right? But they say, oh, these are the gods of the old temples, and they specifically use the Roman Empire, which I think is very interesting because I don't think the Roman Empire actually existed, but we're gonna get there. Because if you look at the old gods of the Roman Empire, they just mimic Greece. They just mimic Greece. They don't even have original stories or anything. And I know I looked into it because I did an astrology season on this. Okay. But anyways, but also trauma fractures, trauma specifically fractures the auric field. And that's why they use media to traumatize us every single motherfucking day that we open our eyes. Making soul memory harder to retrieve because you shut off your heart when you experience trauma because you're trying to protect yourself from the pain, right? And when you shut off your heart, that is your direct connection to your oversoul. Your heart is a memory vault, okay? It is a memory chamber. And so if they keep traumatizing you, you become desensitized to it, but you also close yourself off, okay? And then another thing is false time overlays. And this is the manipulation of our calendars, our timelines, and the linear concept of history, meaning like history is happening in a linear fashion when it's really not, because time doesn't really exist, but it's because we believe that it exists that we're experiencing it this way. Okay. a lot of the civilizations that they talk about ran simultaneously. Okay. And most of us don't even understand that those were around at the same time. Okay. When I say the manipulation of calendars is that the Gregorian calendar, before they had another calendar that was 10 months, and then they had 2 additional months for something else. They also had a calendar that was 28 days each month. So it wasn't a 30-day or a 31-day, like all of them were 28 days. They followed the moon cycles. The original calendar, I think the only person who still has that is Ethiopia. Okay. So they created a calendar based off of the corporations, right? Off of the fiscal tax year. And that's what our calendar is based off of now. And that's why they say January is the new year and y'all can't ever get nothing done because it's in the dead of fucking winter energetically. Is when you are the most asleep. So then you start your new things and you set your goals, and then it's not sustainable because it's when you are the most unconscious. And so by the time that you do become conscious in April, you've used all your fucking energy trying to get something started when you don't have the energy to do it. Okay, so they manipulated the calendars, the timelines, and linear concepts. And the way that they manipulate timelines is they kill the people who hold the memory of those timelines, because our DNA is crystalline. It holds, just like a computer holds information or a storage facility. Our DNA holds tons of information. So they try to eradicate the people who held the memory of those timelines to prevent things like this from happening. What I'm doing right now, you know? Gotcha, bitch. No, I'm just playing. I'm not playing at all, actually. But the erasure of entire civilizations and insertions of artificial ones as well. And like I said, for example, if you look at the Roman Empire, right? And we always say the Roman Empire, right? We talk about them more than we talk about Greece and all these other places, right? If you look at the old gods of the Roman Empire, they literally, story for story, bar for bar, mimic the Greece gods, the gods of Greek, ancient Greek. There's not even a change in the story. It's only a change in the name. And you got to realize that the people who are inserting the history can only mimic. They cannot create something new. They don't have access to the oversoul, which is where creation comes from. They don't have access to pure, unfiltered love energy because they have turned it off and said that it was not useful because they're only thinking about themselves. Okay? So they can only mimic. I will die on that hill. Okay. Also, when you look at the muses, right? The whole muses era was Roman, right? But the muses are actually what they used to call the sibyls. And they used to call the sibyls were priestesses. They were seers, right? They were seers. And they were priestesses. And the male priests were called Moses, by the way, Moses instead of muses, Moses. So the whole art and literature and all of that came specifically from the sibyls. The prophecies of Notre Dame came from the sibyls, right? All of it came from the fucking sibyls. The Vatican is called the Serpent Lady because they were called the serpents. The Vatican is called the Serpent Lady. That's what Vatican translates into because that was their main temple. And that's why they prayed to the Black Madonna. Because all of the sibyls were priestesses under the Black Madonna, Isis, whatever energy you want to call it. It's that energy, though. The divine mother energy. Okay? So the sibyls were the muses. All that art, all that literature, all that stuff comes from them. And then they come in and knock the nose off. And then they, to me, in the Renaissance era, because you got to think that this happened 14th century. The Renaissance era wasn't until late 15th, 16th, 17th century. And during that period, what they did is they called it the rebirth of art, science, and culture. What they did is they went in and they made all these paintings, right? That's where you get Jesus from, because they say Christianity didn't start to the 17th, 18th century. That's not true. It actually started the 14th century. Their prophecy did not come to pass, and they started killing the priests. And that's when we moved into the Enlightenment era, right? But the Renaissance era was a rewriting of history. I don't care. 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 Okay. Next is the collapse of cyclical soul knowledge. Okay. Meaning that you are not able to reincarnate with that knowledge, or planetary ages as well, the planetary knowledge as well. Okay. And then education system, education and religion, because it replaced mystic teachings with dogma and materialist science. Now, if you don't know what materialist science is, it's the belief that everything happens in the material reality, meaning that the material reality is the main reality, and all of the phenomenons is a result of material interaction, which is not true. Okay, the reason why I'm saying this is not true is because this is the realm of effects, right? This is the realm of effects. We can agree that phenomenon means the effect of something. And if we live in a reality of phenomenon, then that means that we live in a reality of effects. Hold on, y'all. They got me doing this damn puzzle. Which means we live in the reality of effects. So that means that the noumenon, which is the opposite of the phenomenon, which means that the noumenon or the cause must be somewhere else. So either in the mental plane, the spiritual plane, the etheric planes, or realms. And an example of this idea of materialist science is that the idea that consciousness and mental states come from your brain's neurochemical processes. Okay? Meaning that our consciousness comes from our brain's neurochemical processes. But that doesn't make sense because they also say that when you go to sleep, they don't know where your consciousness goes. So if it's not here, where the fuck is it? It means it's coming from somewhere else if it's gone. And that's the reason why we have sleep paralysis, right? Because we wake up and our consciousness or our conscious mind rules our physical body, whereas our subconscious mind rules our astral body, right? So when you dream, you don't dream in your conscious mind, you dream in your subconscious mind. And you have a whole nother body, and that's why you can hear and you can feel and you can taste in your dreams without ever physically doing those things. It's because you're in your light body, right? So if your consciousness is for your physical body and your astral body is in your physical body, but your consciousness is somewhere else, that's why you can't move your fucking body, because you cannot move your body with your subconscious mind. You can only move it with your conscious mind. So it doesn't make sense when you look at it. And that's why they give you words in terms like phenomenon. Oh, it's just a phenomenon. It's just a coincidence. When they're talking about your gifts and astral projection and remote viewing and things like that, they are admitting that it exists, but they try to teach us that everything comes through materialist science, meaning everything comes from this material world. There is nothing else. Lies, 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 lies. They also removed feminine wisdom. And with feminine wisdom comes sacred union and comes cosmic law from public consciousness. Okay? And then they also pathologized, which just basically means they determined or they deemed mediumship, healing, and intuitive knowing as a characteristic of being like medically or psychologically abnormal. So they said being a mediumship is abnormal. Not everybody has access to that. Healing is abnormal. Intuitive knowing is abnormal. When I say healing yourself without their help, that's abnormal. Having inner knowing, having discernment, that's abnormal. They don't need you to have discernment, because if you have discernment, you wouldn't need their systems. You would see the bullshit, call the bullshit, and move in another direction, right? But they don't need you to have good discernment because they can't manipulate you when you have good discernment. Do you get what I'm saying? When you are sitting on your inner throne and you are speaking to the God within instead of their God that tells you exactly how to show up, how to act, how to behave, and if you don't, you're going to have a extreme consequence, like burning in a fucking fire. Distortion. Okay, so who cast the spell? Y'all, it's not as sinister as we think. And as a former conspiracy theorist, it's not as sinister as we think. And I've went off that edge. Believe you me, I have, because I've been looking for answers my whole life. Okay. It's not as sinister as we think, though. It wasn't done by a bunch of bad people with magic wands. Okay. It was a coalition of distorted forces, and that included certain fallen light beings. And when I say fallen, I mean that they disconnected from their oversoul. Okay. They turned their heart off. They closed their heart space because they became service to self, and service to self is extreme narcissism, hatred, greed. They became self-focused. And so they didn't move in truth and authenticity anymore. They moved in manipulation and deceit. Okay. So these certain fallen light beings who sought control over Earth's stargates. Not only that, hybrid bloodlines and priesthoods who inverted Atlantean knowledge. Okay. Later, artificial intelligence streams that feed on separation and fear. Okay. A lot of the mental thought, the embedded mental thought programs are you tapping into a frequency of artificial intelligence that is mimicking either spiritual leaders or like spiritual energy like Amara, or they speak the language, but they're actually creating urgency and force and stuff like that and distortion through those energies. Or they're feeding on separation and fear. And unknowingly, even human beings who are ingrained in the matrix, okay, reinforcing the spell through the things that they believe. And that's why they need you to go to school. And that's why they need you to go to church, because then they tell you what to believe. And what we believe, we create. And where we focus our attention, energy flows. So they need the energy to flow in specific directions. So they got the priest up there conducting you. They got the teacher up there conducting you and telling you what to believe in. History, the false timelines, all of that. And that's why you're not allowed to ask questions. Don't you question God. Don't you question your parent. Don't you question your teacher. Don't you question shit. Dummy, zombie. That's what you're supposed to be. But the problem is that a lot of us aren't. Okay, so what you need to remember is that not all of these things are evil, because you can look around and see people who are steeped in Christianity right now still pushing the same rhetoric. They don't know any better. So, but when you have all these people doing that at one time, it creates a collective energy. It affects the entire collective. Okay, so it's not as sinister, like I said, as we think we are. Some were just deeply disconnected, and they began replicating the distortion without knowing. Okay, many of us do that today. Like I said, them people with that book. Okay, and it worked because humans were deeply feeling beings, and once trauma hit, the heart closed and memories fragmented. Okay, we are feeling beings, meaning the real truth is feeling. So I told you that story at the beginning of this live about me turning off my seership in a previous life, and I tried to learn how to feel with my whole being so that I could feel truth. We are feeling beings. And when we experience trauma, we don't want to feel it again. And so we lock it down. That's the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing, but we lock it down. So the spell could only hold because we were hurt enough to forget ourselves. We were hurt. Okay. And this is why I'm always preaching healing. And I'm working on this course right now. I think I'm working on a shadow work course, and I'm working on a flame bearers course, because you got to feel it again. That's the only way to get through it. That's the only way to reopen your heart. You have to feel it again. It's a requirement. It's a requirement. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. And it sucks. And it's not good. And sometimes it is fucking awful, but that's the only way to get to the other side. Okay. Why is this important? Because the spell is breaking right now. Every time that somebody speaks truth that makes no linear sense, every time somebody has a dream of a city that does not exist, every time somebody cries for a temple that they've never seen, every time that you feel the ache of names like Atlantis, Tartaria, Amaya, the spell cracks and memory begins to sing again. Every time that I get on here and I do this, it is breaking. Okay. So it's not your fault that you forgot. It's not your fault. All right. It's not your fault. Now that we've done all that, let's talk about Amara again. All right. So we talked about her being chosen. We talked about the sacred separation and why most of us have forgotten a lot of these things. So let's talk about a day in the life of Amara, but understand that her day was not ruled by linear time. Okay. But I'm still going to break it down to you in linear terms or by specific points of the day, just so that you can understand. Okay. So she was not ruled by clocks or anything. She was moving according to energy, to the sun, to the moon, to the grid alignments, and the needs of the living temples. Okay. So first you have let it up, girl. That's remembrance, y'all. When you sit in the field of somebody who has embodied themselves, or you sit in the resonance of somebody who remembers, you start to remember as well. And it's something you feel in your bones. And the way that you know that you're remembering is the grief comes back to the top. The grief that is hidden, it comes back to the top. And the reason why the grief needs to come to the top is because within that pain are hidden the codes that you are now activating. But you got to get the pain out of the way, because remember I said Amara put all the codes in trauma-filled, dense timelines. And when I say dense, I mean timelines that are filled with pain. So when you sit with somebody who is creating a temple for you to experience love, for you to remember like we have created together, the grief starts to come up, because that is the pathway through. Grief is very, very sacred. Pain and grief are like a vehicle for the codes you are meant to activate. Love, you're gonna have to go back to the previous. This is episode 10. You're gonna have to go back to the previous videos. Okay. She was the high priestess of Atlantis. But you're gonna have to, if you want the full explanation, everything is on my YouTube. Everything is in the playlist that says Spiritual Talk with Big Taj. This is episode 10. Okay. So let me organize how she had her day. Okay. So first was Dawn, and Dawn is going to be first light activation. Hey, Kara. It's going to be the first light activation. Okay. Dawn is like when the sun is coming up and you start to see the first light, but the sun is not fully high in the sky. Okay. That's what I would consider to be dawn. Okay. So when dawn would happen, she would wake up to the crystal singing, and it was a soft harmonic pulse through the temple walls as the sunlight touched the crystal field. Okay. Because remember, Atlantis was a crystal city. So as the sun rose in the sky, it would hit the crystals, and crystals refract light. Okay. But crystals also make tones and sounds, because crystals have consciousness inside of them. The crystal itself is a vehicle, but there's consciousness inside of that crystal that holds pure, unfiltered love energy, or it could hold other things. Okay. So basically, when the sun would hit the crystals will start to sing, and that will wake her up. Okay. She would sit quietly, often outside in her garden of water mirrors and luminous vines, and she would enter into a state of alignment with Earth's grid. I have been doing this every morning, y'all. T. All right. No words were spoken yet. When she woke up, the first thing that she did was she would go and she would sit with herself in this garden and align herself with Earth. She would only breathe. She would sit in stillness, and she would listen to the pulse of the land. And her first question was always, what does the earth need from me today? And since she lived in co-creation with the soul of the world around us, it was never, what do I want to do today? She lived a life of service. So she was like, what does the earth need from me today? Okay. That was how she started her day every single day, because you got to think that the people of Atlantis were very ritualistic. They practiced spirituality. I'm not even going to say that they practiced it. They embodied spirituality. Everything they did was done with intention. It was done consciously. It was done, according to whatever service they were there to do, whatever function they served in society. Because remember, it wasn't a hierarchy. It was about purpose. It was about function. It was about your capacity to hold love and remembrance. Okay. So that was dawn. Then morning, she would go do temple work and flame tending immediately. And so what that looks like is, after her personal alignment, pause. Remember, I said proper care for other people is built on the foundation of self-love. That means you come first, and then you come back after you have taken care of yourself. Okay? I hope y'all hear me. You first, put your mask on first, and then help the person next to you. Okay? So first, after her personal alignment, she would go to the flame chambers. And these were vast open halls filled with living crystals, water pathways, and energy spirals. So a lot of these chambers sometimes will have like light spirals and stuff on the floor, and they would have like glyphs on the wall as you like walk down the hallway. At least the ones that I've seen. And she would tend the crystal flame. So she would sing to the crystal. She would code it with harmonic keys, because remember I said through your voice comes activation codes, right? She would weave frequencies that basically stabilized Earth's grid. So after she got herself together, she got Earth together. Why? Because Earth affects the inhabitants on Earth. Okay. Sometimes she would work alone. Other times she would work in small circles of priestess who kind of gathered and each carried a different note of the flame song. Okay. Her work was not labor, it was ceremony through presence. Okay. Each tone, each breath, each hand movement, because mudras and stuff like that are really, they are circuits. Your body is a circuit and you move energy through your body through these circuits. Okay. Her hand movements, all of it sent ripples into the crystalline matrix of Earth. Okay. So first she took care of herself and got herself into alignment, and then she would get the earth into alignment. Okay. Midday was about guidance and healing. And this is after she flame 10, she would basically open up her dream rooms because she was a dream walker. She was a dream seer. Okay. So this is a space where people could come in, or beings could come in for healing, for remembrance, and for soul retrieval. And a lot of soul retrieval actually happens in the dream time. Okay. Fragments of your soul will leave to the astral plane. Like, for example, when you experience trauma, especially I see this in kids, say they get scared or something, or they being beat or whatever terrible people do to kids. And what will happen is your soul will say, fuck this, and try to go back to the astral plane. So it'll create a tear, and some of your soul's essence will go to the astral plane. So what she would do is, if there was soul retrieval that needed to happen, whether it was stolen, it was siphoned, or you made that choice for yourself, she would go back and retrieve those fragments that you need to make people whole again. Okay. She would sit amongst water pools and crystal orbs, receiving those who came seeking soul activation, and people who needed to release or be released from karmic entanglement. She also would help people who are simply trying to remember who they are or who they were before distortion touched them. Okay, which means that when ego started to creep in, she still did the work, right? But she never diagnosed people or anything like that. She simply saw them. She sang their true name, or that, because if you remember, I said your name is your tone. Your name is your course frequency. So her voice acted as activation and acted as healing. So she would sing their true name, and she held the frequency of their wholeness. Okay. And that's where healing happened. But it wasn't through intervention or anything like that. It was through soul resonance restoration. Okay. So her midday was about guidance and helping people heal and all of those things. Okay. And then the afternoon was about creation and teaching. And basically what would happen is when we enter this phase of softer light, so it's not beaming the sun. When we enter into the phase of softer light, Amara would often create through song and art and sacred writing or dream weaving, which means that she would create every single day. Okay. Which we need to be creating every single day, because that is your sacred energy expressing itself through sexual energy, which they've turned us against, which is not that. That is not a bad thing, but they turned you against it because that's a very, very easy way for you to create. Okay. It's when your energy is the most potent. But also creative energy and emotional energy. Those of y'all who are water signs, y'all understand the gift that y'all carry, especially when y'all have water moons. Okay. Your body is a water temple. Frequency moves quicker across water. Okay. Your ability and capacity to manifest, when y'all get out of your own fucking way, when it comes to seeing yourself as your emotions, and you can separate yourself from your emotions, and you realize that that is the water intelligence inside of you communicating to you. When you can get out of your own way and you can understand that that is guidance. Okay. Your ability to manifest is so fucking untouched, and you do it quickly. But you got to believe that that is not punishment. The emotion, it is not punishment. It isn't punishment. It's actually pure feeling. And you're a very, very feeling being. So when you can become an emotional alchemist, changes everything for you, for us, because I'm a Scorpio moon. Hello. All right. She taught others not through lecture, but through immersion. And what that means is she used to walk them through gardens. She would swim with them in crystalline waters. She would move with them through Stargate energies. Like she would literally be like, hold my hand, let's go. You know, she was like that. And her students learned by feeling the earth's breath through them, by listening to the stones and the rivers, by activating their soul light through experience. And she was a living embodiment. She was not a distant teacher. Like she was the embodiment for them to see. Okay. Everything that she did was intentional. Everything that she did embodied the energy that they were supposed to become. So if they could just see her, they knew what to do. Okay. And then in the evening time, that was her time for the sacred council and the stargates. So as the stars begin to rise in the sky, Amara would sometimes meet with the flame council, which are a group of seers, grid workers, and also crystalline guardians. I do have this memory of her doing this, and they were walking down this staircase, and it was like a stone staircase is the only way that I could describe it, and it kind of spiraled down. And she was actually working, whoever was standing behind her was a reptilian, and that's how I know not every single reptilian is bad or malevolent. Okay. Not the whole race. It's almost like you got good people, you got bad people. Same fucking thing across every single race. The Arcturians, the octopus, they call it the Sentians or Setians or whatever the fuck you want to call them. But when Atlantis started to fall, I have a memory of them going down this spiral staircase to meet in this council hall that I don't think many people had access to. Okay. So this happened in the evening time. And some of them are a group of seers, some of them are grid workers, some of them are crystal guardians. Okay. And they worked with Stargate alignment. They worked with tuning Earth's grid to the galactic harmonics. And these meetings were quiet, they were precise, and they were vibrational. Speaking was minimal in this area, and knowing was the primary language, meaning like everybody just operated from this place of knowing. Okay. And then at certain moon phases, she would also use this evening time to lead gatekeeping ceremonies, meaning she would open or close energy portals depending on Earth's evolutionary need. Okay. And then lastly, during the nighttime, she would dream walk, and she would tend to the temple of the inner flame. Okay. Now, night was sacred dream time. Amara would enter into deep meditation. She would travel into the dream realms, and not just for herself, but to guard other people's dreams as well, to receive star guidance and to weave new codes into the astral field. Because remember, I'll tell you, when you go to dream, that is the real world. Okay. And not only can you communicate with your star guides, with your oversoul, with anything that is, or any being that is meant to educate or guide you on your journey, you can also enter into different timelines, different realms, different everything. Okay. Amara told me a year ago that we are not supposed to fall unconscious when we go to sleep. We were never supposed to dream unconsciously. We were meant to go into a deep meditative state, and we were meant to stay conscious and direct ourselves in the dream realm. It is very dangerous for us to be dreaming unconsciously because we don't know where the hell we're going. So her consciousness did not sleep. Her body is what needed the sleep. Her consciousness was infinite. Okay, meaning it doesn't get tired, but it does need to recharge itself, which means that during that dream time, it goes back to the dream state where it can recharge and your body goes to sleep, because your body is the vessel for the consciousness, but you are not the body. Okay, you are the consciousness and awareness within the body. So we were never supposed to go to sleep fully in darkness. A lot of us still do dream work while we're sleeping. We just don't have awareness of it because we're not ready in these physical bodies. That's why sometimes y'all wake up and y'all fucking exhausted. All right. Sometimes she would dream walk to retrieve lost soul fragments from those beginning to fracture. She would heal ancient bloodline distortions before they manifested physically, because again, you can heal anything in the spirit, in the energy, before it's made manifest, because we live in the realm of phenomenon. Means that everything ends here. This is the result of something that happened energetically. When you get cancer, it's because you have an energy blockage energetically. And if you can fix the energy blockage, you fix the manifestation of that thing. Okay, because this is the realm of manifestation. It's form. It's matter. It's where things become material, but they have to start somewhere if this is the end point. Okay, so she would also prepare temples for incoming star seeding and stargate openings as well. But she did not sleep like we know it. Her body rested, but her soul was fully active in multidimensional service. Okay. And this is what we have been cut off from. All right. So how she lived in her essence is that she lived with devotion, but not duty, meaning she was devoted to the cause. This is something that she loved to do. This is something that brought her joy because she was a being of service, kind of like what I do. My heart's desire energy is in the two energy, which is the energy of all knowing. It's the most feminine of all energies, but it is the energy of service. And it's a energy of service that does not need to be at the forefront. It's the energy of service that is okay with being in the background as long as we're moving towards the goal. Okay. So she didn't feel like she didn't do things out of obligation. She was doing things because she was devoted to the cause. Okay. She lived with sovereignty, meaning like she was a sovereign being, but she was not in isolation. Okay. She was tender and had profound power and in complete co-creation with Earth and the stars in the oversoul field. Remember, Earth was a place we came to dream awake, which means that we have access to angelic codes, to oversoul fields, to the stars, to Earth herself, to create whatever it is that we want to create. But in order for you to create, you have to be lucid dreaming while you're awake, which means you have to be conscious. You have to be aware. You have to be intentional while you are awake, because that is how you fucking create. That is how you create. And I don't say that in a condescending way, even though I know I may have fooled you with my face. Okay. That is how you create, though. Okay. So her whole life was ceremony. It was not performance. She was the living frequency of remembrance. Okay. And this is the type of life we have to lead so that we can weave back into being, which means we need to make our life a ceremony. We need to become a living frequency of what it is that we want to see in this world. And it doesn't come through performance. When I wake up in the morning, I'll give y'all my routine before I give y'all some of the stuff that she did. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I put on my gym. Well, I go brush my teeth, wash my face, and I put on my gym clothes because I need to work out. And if I don't put the clothes on, it's not going to get done. So I put on my gym clothes and I come outside. I grab me a thing of water. I come outside and I sit on my balcony. And I have like a little rooftop. So I watch the birds do what they do. I sit in presence. I say my incantations because I have specific incantations that I say every single day. So I place one hand over my heart, one hand on my womb, and I say my incantations. When I go to drink my water, I say the incantation over the water. So when I drink it, down the hatch. Because water is more than to hydrate you. It is intelligence. It's sentient. Your body is a water temple. Speak to the water before you put the water in your body. Okay, so I speak my intention over the water. I drink the water and I sit there with myself. That's the first 15 minutes. The next 15 minutes, I am basically saying affirmations to myself. I trust myself. I trust my knowing. I trust that my body is able to hold this light without distortion and with integrity. I say things like that, and I'm just kind of like building myself up for the day, and I'm setting my intentions for the day. And then I just kind of sit there in stillness. And when I say stillness, I mean that I'm just being present with myself. I'm not trying to do anything. I'm not trying to visualize anything. I'm not trying to meditate. I'm not trying to retrieve a memory or anything. I am just sitting in my body. And then I ask Earth to show me what it needs from me today. And I ask Love to show me how I could be a vessel. Because I decide to be a temple of love. And I say, show me in all the ways, order my steps. I show gratitude to my oversoul. I show gratitude to my guardians. And then my alarm clock goes off about 9 o'clock. And that's when I got to go die while I still am alive. And so I go work out, which is not fun. But I go work out. I did a HIIT workout today, and I'm pretty sure that bitch hit me. So yeah. So I go work out. Once I'm done working out, I go shower. I maybe make some content, work on my spiritual course that I'm working on for you guys to get y'all through this process and such. And then I come and start meeting with clients. I don't take clients until about 12 o'clock. The only time I have a client in the daytime is on Tuesday and Friday. Tuesdays, you can get a lot more done. Friday is the day for me because I'm ruled by Venus. So I'm just in a better mood on Friday. So I have a client at 12 o'clock on Tuesday and 4 o'clock. And then Wednesday, I don't have a client until 5 o'clock because I am getting prepared to come live and do with y'all. Thursday, I don't have a client until 5 o'clock, but I do take mentees for gifts and stuff like that on Thursdays. Fridays, I have 2 clients, one at 11, one at 3 o'clock. And every single day I work out, and then I do go into my thing, but I get myself together first before I come and provide y'all services. Every day. Get me together, then I come and get y'all together. Okay. After I shower, I always anoint myself, and I do that with rose oil because that's the energy I exist underneath. Okay. So I take rose hip oil and I anoint my crown. I anoint my third eye. I anoint my heart. I anoint my wrist because these are conductors. I anoint my solar plexus because that is how you direct your will and make conscious decisions. I anoint my womb because I intend to create always. And I anoint the bottom of my feet, which is clearing path. Okay. And also your soul is in your heel. When you pass away, your soul comes out of the bottom of your heel. So make sure ain't nobody standing at the end of the bed. Okay. But I anoint myself, and I do that with an oil when it's heavy work. When I'm going to do work like this, I do that with an oil because that helps you to seal your field. Okay. If you don't know how to protect yourself energetically or how the ancients used to protect themselves, I have a spiritual protection course available on my website. It is $64.44. Okay. Intentionally with the numbers. And it's 3.5 hours. And I give you rituals. I give you exactly what to do. I teach you how to do energy work and all of those things. It is available on my website, www.bigtaj.com. That's with 2 J's. Okay. It's already there. But I anoint myself with oil usually, but if I'm gonna do something like releasing, I'll use water. Before I go to bed, I sit in stillness, and I just sit with myself, no intention, no nothing. I turn all the lights off. I sit in stillness. Okay. So I light a candle though. I do light a candle because a candle is a living altar. A candle is a living portal. I'm sorry. It's a living portal. It's how you commune with spirits. And so I invite my oversoul in, and only my oversoul, and I light a candle. And if she has any messages for me, I write them down, or I kind of just sit there and let whatever come up. Before I go to bed. After I do my stillness practice, I do sound healing every single day. Crystal bowls. The channel I like to use is Chakra Vibrations or Meditative Mind. But I do sound healing, and then I go to sleep. But every single day, you need to be in ceremony. You need to live your life like ceremony. Okay. So some of the rituals and practices that she participated in is heart, soul, flame practices. And these were daily breath-based, body held, and they were done when no one was watching. Each thing basically clarified what was hers to hold, right? And when I say I do those morning incantations, I always say I only carry what's mine, or I'll release anything that is not of my oversoul light, things like that. Okay. So she had sacred silence, and this was with breath codes. And she would basically, she would not speak, but she would breathe with intention. Okay. And with every inhale, she reclaimed scattered pieces of her, scattered pain. And with every exhale, she released mimics and hooks and distorted memory. She often breathed with one hand over her heart and the other one over her womb, which creates a circuit of inner coherence, which we talked about coherence last time and why that's important. And this was oversoul pulse regulation. So she would sit in silence, and she would basically just breathe in everything that she's lost and then exhale everything that was attached to her that did not belong to her. Okay. And she would create that inner circuit, which is basically her regulating the pulse of her oversoul. Okay. Next, she did grief anointing. And like I said, grief is sacred. And maybe I'll talk about that more next time. Okay. But when grief would rise in her body, she would anoint her body like a living altar. Usually she would use rose or myrrh oil, and then water from sacred wells, or she would use crushed herbs or flower ash. Okay. And what she would say is, I do not carry what is not mine. I bless the pain, but I am not building a home in it. I grieve, but I remain open. Okay. And each tear basically became an offering, because tears are portals as well. But each tear became an offering, not a wound. And she let the grief kind of pass through her. But she did not make her body a casket for pain. She literally would let it move through her when it needed to move through her. And she would offer it up to the light. Like, this is what I have today. Okay. Also, she engaged in sacred refusal, and was one of her strongest practices. And there was no anger or rejection or anything, just pure crystalline refusal of distortion. And so when mimic energy came near her, false lovers, false teachers, or beings that were attempting to drain her, she would look them square in the eyes, and she would say, "Not through me, not anymore." And she would completely dismantle them, meaning like get them out of her resonance. And this wasn't an act of violence. It was basically frequency precision. And so she trained her body to tighten her auric weave in real time so that she did not have to go into confrontation with other people. She just exists at the tone of truth. Okay. She also did moonwalk rituals. And this is anytime that her heart felt heavy or she felt confused, she would walk under the moon barefoot, slow, and one step equaled one prayer. And with each step, she would say, "This I release, this I forgive, this I remember, this I return to light." And her body became the vessel for her heart to speak, and movement was her way of not letting emotion calcify in her body. Okay. Yes, boundaries. And then she also did daily light offerings. And these daily light offerings, what she would basically do is place both of her hands over her chest, and she would say, "What is not love, leave me. What is not love, what is love, stay and grow." So what is not love, leave me. What is love, stay and grow. And then she'd blow into her hands. Breath. We about to talk about breath, which is a pulse of oversoul breath. And she would release it towards earth as an offering of, "This is what I have to give today." Okay. Even when she felt empty, she knew that one breath of clear truth was enough to change the field around her. All right. So why breath? What you got to understand about breath is that breath is a living bridge, just like water. Breath is a living bridge between soul, flame, and oversoul. And this was forgotten by us because we were taught that breath is a means of survival, but it really is a means of remembering. Okay. So we've been taught that breath is inhale, exhale. It's a relaxation tool. It's a life function. But Amara and the temple lineages understood that breath is the living flame. It is a carrier tone of memory and oversoul signal as well. Okay. So breath is a carrier of your soul tone. Each breath you take rebroadcasts your frequency into the field. So if your breath is shallow, if it's afraid, or if it is mimic influence, your field becomes foggy. But if your breath is sovereign and rhythmic and anchored in presence, your field sings your true name. Okay, it means like it aligns you with your true tone. All right. Amara trained herself to breathe only when in coherence. Even when she was in silence, she was broadcasting her oversoul tone. So breath is basically a memory key too. Your body holds flame memory in your spine, in your womb, in your auric grid, but the lock to that memory is open through breath. So Amara could breathe into spaces of her body and unseal memory scrolls that others forgot. Okay. And this is a practice that you can try at home. Okay. Place your hand over your heart or your womb, one or the other, or you can do both. Inhale into it as if there's memory hiding there, and then exhale with the intention that you are safe to remember. Say, "I am safe to remember." This is a breath. This is how you use breath as memory retrieval. And she did this daily, and you can too. When I am sitting in stillness or sitting in presence or whatever, I always breathe up and down my spine, or I'll breathe into my heart. Okay. Or I'll breathe into my womb, because your womb is the void. Everything is there. Okay. Your ancestral lineage is in your womb. But also breath builds a shield around you. So instead of energetic force fields, Amara built flame breath shields. And what she would do is she would inhale and draw in oversoul coherence, and exhale through her skin, her eyes, and her palms, creating a living breath web around her. And what she would say is that no mimic could enter, because this field around her was alive. It was like a live representation of her oversoul pulse. So she trained breath like other people's trained weapon, because and she would do this through silence, patience, and precision. Right. One thing that I do when I try to put when I'm putting a shield around me, is I breathe in light from above, and I see it form a sun at the at my heart center. Why? Because the sun is the flame of this reality, of this universe. The sun is the flame of this universe. Okay, so you can also see flame. You don't have to see it as like how we see it in one single strand. You can see it like the sun. So I breathe in oversoul light, and it forms a circle in my chest, and that's on the inhale. When I exhale, I expand it outside of myself, at least 6 feet in each direction. When I say each direction, I mean left, right, front, back, up, down. Okay. So breath aligns your body. Okay. And she knew that there wasn't just one way to breathe. There's soul breath, which happens from your chest. There's womb breath, which happens from your pelvic bowl. And then there's oversoul breath, which happens from crown to feet pulse. Okay. So most people only breathe one way. I feel like a lot of us breathe. We think we breathe through our nose. We breathe through our crown. But she trained herself to synchronize all three so that they moved in rhythmic unison. And this created cellular coherence where she could walk into chaos and not lose her tone at all, because all three of them were breathing as a unit, in coherence. But also breath is a portal opener as well. To Amara, breath opened gates. So anytime she would exhale before speaking, she would open a truth portal. When she would inhale before sleep, she opens up a dream gate. When she would breathe over water, she activate memory within the elements, because water is memory. Okay. And then shared breath is when she would seal a soul contract or release it. Okay. So nothing entered her field without breath invitation. And that is why her presence felt so sovereign, whole, and so quiet as well. So in flame terms, breath is not air. It is coded frequency delivery. It moves through the body's waters, activating soul memory. Okay. It carries voice, it carries tone, and it carries truth to other people. And it opens and seals energetic gates with precision. So a practice, again, that you can do is sit in sacred stillness and inhale slowly and say in your mind, I call back my oversoul tone. And then when you exhale, say, I breathe only what is mine. And you can repeat this 3 times. I would do it once through your heart, once through your womb, and once through your crown. And then let your body recalibrate for a second, because when you pulling in light into your body, and you haven't pulled in light in a long time, you start to shake. You might get real hot. You might start feeling like grief or anxiety is rising in your field. So you got to just keep breathing through it and wait until it calibrates and it integrates. Okay. And so what I would do is I always see my cells open. I don't know how it looks like a circle, and I see them open and I see the light going into the cells. Okay. But you're going to feel memory, or you're going to feel grief rise, and you have to let it pass through you. Don't hold on to it. Like literally let it come up. And this is you becoming flame breathed again. I'm gonna post this on YouTube, y'all. Y'all can go rewatch it there. So next, now that we understand how her day in the life went, right? And we understand like how she was chosen, the sacrifice she had to make, and all those things, what her day looked like, what things of service that she would do, what practices she would have, right? I think I wanted us in this episode to talk about Atlantis. Hold on, let me slow down, y'all. Okay. I wanted us to talk about Atlantis in the Golden Age, because I feel like we jumped straight into the betrayal, the fall, all of this, right? So I wanted us to talk about Atlantis in the Golden Age, and also talk about Amara and how she existed in the Golden Age, now that we talked about where she was before Atlantis, and all of these things. And so that next we can move into the sacred betrayal, how she defended herself. And then next time, and I know I said this the last 3 episodes because I'm just kind of doing them as I go, we'll talk about what she did to protect the flame. Okay. So the sacred betrayal. So the sacred betrayal is a soul wound that is etched into the crystalline record of earth. And it's also etched into the heart of those of us who walk the temples with open trust. Meaning like those of us who were actually seated for Atlantis. Okay. And I talked about that a couple episodes ago. There's certain specific souls who have been incarnating here because we are stuck in distortion, but we were seated for the Atlantis experiment specifically. So we are the Atlanteans. Okay. So the sacred betrayal was not one event, but it was a series of energetic, emotional, and spiritual ruptures that led to the fall of Atlantis and the fragmentation of the original flame holders. So it was, when I say sacred betrayal, I'm referring to the moment that the sacred flame was misused. It was stolen, or it was silenced. And this was a time when the inner flame temples were compromised, when crystal technology was distorted for ego and control, and when priestesses, seers, flame holders were silenced. They were hunted, and they were turned on by their own. Okay. And most painfully, those closest to the divine feminine carriers, because remember I told y'all that Atlantis was a solar flame society, but it was led, not led, but led in the way that we understand it by divine feminine carriers. Okay. So the closest people to them, or people that they trained, who trained underneath them, people that they love, people that stood beside them, chose the path of separation, manipulation, and fear. Okay, so they in turn betrayed them. And this betrayal came in many forms. There was the theft of the crystal flame codes, and this is where some flame priests, originally trained in pure intention, began to extract, replicate, and weaponize the flame frequencies for power. Okay, and they sought to use the sacred sound codes and Stargate keys not for planetary alignment like they're usually supposed to be used for, but for personal sovereignty and control. And this corrupted the energetic fields of the land and began to cause grid fractures. Okay, because remember I said it was a light frequency that operated in the 5D, 6D, but it started to drop in frequency. Okay, next, they were silencing the priestess temples, which means the feminine. So the rose flame temples, like the one that Amara guarded, they were raided, they were infiltrated, and some of the priestess were captured. They were violated. Y'all know what the fuck I mean when I say violated. That also happened to the Sibyls. History repeated itself with the Sibyls. But this is pre-Sibyl. That was just like an echo of something that had already happened. But they were captured, they were violated, and they were made into vessels for false ascension rituals, meaning like they captured them and they basically took them into a form of slavery. Okay. The womb wisdom was seen as a threat, which is what comes from women very naturally. Men have wombs too energetically, but they are like above the pelvic bone, like the same area. So they seen the womb wisdom as a threat. So mothers, singers, and dreamers were silenced. Okay. They also many had to hide their knowledge because of this. Okay. And they had to veil themselves. A lot of people went into inner earth. A lot of people went back to Sirius through the Stargates or Venus, or a lot of people entered into dream realms until it was safe to return. Some people also went into stasis, and stasis is kind of like, technology wise, it would be like cryo freezing. So if you ever seen like a movie where they freeze your body in this bag and then you can wake up 100 years later, or seen Futurama or anything like that, it's like cryo freezing, but we can enter into that state naturally. Those of us who have access to more soul energy. Okay. And then they also manipulated the soul gateways. And this is where souls begin to reincarnate into distortion loops. They were pulled through astral systems of false light rather than true soul remembrance. And what this kind of looks like, y'all, is that, you know, they tell you to go into the light. Go into the light, Carolyn. Well, if you go into that motherfucking light, you're going to be reincarnated into a trauma loop. Okay. What actually happens is that they created this soul trap, right? And when you pass away and you don't understand that death is not final, right? A lot of people pass away scared or in fear. I know this because I am a medium. So a lot of people are terrified when they pass away. Okay. Because you think that death is final and you're never coming back and you're never going to be able to communicate with people and all of these things. So when they pass away in a tense state. And because you pass away in a tense state, or a state that's constricted, or what happens is you create tension in your astral body. And so when you pass away and your soul leaves your body, it's pulled towards distortion, because distortion is contraction, whereas the opposite is expansion. you know, and because you're not aware and you're terrified or you got shot or whatever the trauma is behind it, when you pass away, you're pulled back into the light. Okay. And because you see the light, you think, okay, they tell me to go through the light, I'm supposed to go through the light, this is where I am. And what'll happen is these distorted guardians will come and say, oh my gosh, you were actually there for a mission, do you want to go back? Let's do a life review. And they do a life review and they show you all the things that you did wrong, quote unquote wrong or bad or whatever. And then they take you through everything they help you to perceive everything through the people that you hurt. Meaning, like, you also now have to feel it through other people's experience. So the pain, like a lot of times, like I'll get parents who come through who didn't know that they hurt their child in the way that they hurt them until they have to go through this life review. Yes, exactly, like so. And so they go through that life review, right? And after they go through the life review, they like, do you want to go back and try again? Because this was a test and you felt the test and you got to go back and got to try again, you know? And so then they get you to agree. And then you are back into this loop. Okay. Whereas if you pass away and you pass away in pure knowingness that you're going to be okay, meaning like if it happens suddenly and you're not afraid or anything like that, and you don't create tension in your astral body, you can actually turn around and the whole universe is behind you. But not only that, what they were teaching through the Egyptian Book of the Dead and through the Tibetan Book of the Dead is astral projection. And the reason why they were teaching you how to die while you were alive is what they called it, but it really was astral projection. The reason why they was teaching that is because if your body is about to die, you could just astral project out of your body, and you could astral project to the astral plane or astral project to the safe haven that you have created and meet with your guides there. That way you don't get caught by the distorted guides. You get what I'm saying? You know, ouch. So, yeah. But what they basically did is they created these distortion loops for us to get pulled into, these soul traps for us to get pulled into. Okay. Oh, that must be alignment for you, Portia. You must needed to hear this. So basically, souls began to reincarnate into these distortion loops. They were pulled through astral systems of false light rather than true soul remembrance. And then artificial stargates were opened as well. And they were non-organic beings entered the earth realms, mimicking guides, council, and descended beings. You know how they say certain beings were created. And they came through the Caucasus Mountains. Well, the Caucasus Mountains is a portal, by the way. And they were not created here, but they were created by beings like us. And many were misled, not because they were evil, but because they had fallen or they had forgotten, which also is where the Anunnaki come in as well. Okay, so Amara was betrayed by those that she loved, she trained, and she protected. One of her closest temple brothers took the voice codes that she was guarding, and she offered them to a corrupt council, or he offered them to a corrupt council. And the reason why he did this is not to betray her. Okay. He believed that he could protect her by sharing them, but instead it activated a destructive sequence in the crystal grid. Let me just go ahead. I'm gonna just go ahead and mute you because don't come in here and distract him. Not today. All right. So her temple was overtaken. Basically, he offered up the damn codes to the people because he thought he was protecting her. They took them shits and used them for things they wasn't supposed to fucking use it for. And it allowed them to be able to overtake her the Rose Flame Temple. Okay. And she had to basically seal her flame. She had to disperse the crystal, which is what we talked about before. I don't even know how do you say that. She disintegrated it in her hand into 144,000 perfect shards, and then she swallowed it, and it was birthed into a lot of us. Okay, so That's how she dispersed the crystal. That's what I'm talking about. And then she left by water and she veiled her presence, which is, I already told you about the memory that I have of her leaving and right before she left. I felt like she like needed to go before somebody came back or somebody whatever. And I seen her dissolve the crystal, swallow it. And then I seen her leaving by water and I seen the violet flame crystal temple next to her, which was kind of had the arcs and it was kind of open. You can kind of see straight through it. Beautiful, by the way. But beautiful. And like the building sparkles at night, like it's made of stardust or some shit. And she left. Okay. So this is called sacred because it had to happen. And the reason being is that the betrayal broke the illusion that divinity could only be held in temples. If it forced, and what I mean by that is like we only like divine beings rested in temples, right? Okay. You are very welcome, my love. That's what this space is for, to unlock the remembrance. All right. But the betrayal broke the illusion that divinity could only be held in temples, right? It forced the flame to disperse into many people and into people like you and me, right? And it ensured that one day the remembrance will rise again through sovereign souls who could no longer be controlled, hunted, or silenced again, which is us. Back then, we believed that only the divine had only specific beings could hold divinity, could create a temple within themselves to hold divinity. That's what we believed back then. And all those peoples resided in the temples. Well, the betrayal made us realize that that's not fucking true. So it had to happen. And the reason why it's sacred is because it had to happen in order for us to reach our next step in evolution, right? You get it? So signs that you are carrying the wound from this betrayal is that you feel deeply afraid to trust leadership or groups. For example, my whole life, you can't tell me shit. You could never tell me anything. I don't know. Not my mama, not nobody. I don't know why that is. I just don't, especially when it's a control. Like, it's not that you couldn't tell me nothing, is that I don't like being controlled. And anytime that somebody try to control me or manipulate me or anything like that, I have a visceral fucking reaction to that. Having memories or dreams of being silenced, chased, or hidden, experiencing a block in speaking, in singing, or in claiming spiritual truth, holding grief that can't be explained, especially around temples, sisters, or sound, and feeling like you've made a vow that you don't fully remember, but you know it involves protection. Okay. So remember I told y'all, hold on. So I just said this, but she dispersed the crystal into 144,000 shards, right? And she put them in me and you. So the souls who carry those shards are called crystal holders. And these are the people who have, and also they birth crystal children. The crystal children are the crystal holders, and they're different than the golden children because the golden children are the people who hold the memory of Atlantis. And those are the children who are being born right now. And that's why our kids are being hunted. And they're keeping them in underground. We're not even going to go there. We're not even going to go there. The crystal children, the crystal beings, the crystal holders. That is the people who have one of these 144,000 shards. Okay. The reason why they were chosen is not because they were better or anything like that. They were entrusted because they could hold what others could not hold without exploiting it. So, meaning like you're a person of integrity, or you're supposed to be a person of integrity if you have not fell into distortion, but you're supposed to be a person of integrity. And they were able to carry divine memory of Atlantis and Lemuria and Inner Earth and beyond that. I have memories, or I have astral projected to Sirius B, I believe is what it is. Also Andromeda, I believe. And then there's also underwater civilizations as well. I don't know if you're aware of that. And there's civilizations that are literally living as if they were living, like we're living a life on Earth, they're living a life wherever the fuck they are. And their technology is way more advanced than ours, by the way. But they also house sacred knowledge in their bodies, their voice, their wombs, and their bloodlines. The reason why I'm talking about this is because they were often hunted to be silenced, to be shamed, or to be cast out. They were tracked through their bloodlines, through their soul contracts and etheric signatures. They were feared by distorted masculine systems because of their ability to undo control through frequency. Because everything is about resonance, everything is about frequency. We could destroy this whole thing if we just got our vibes right. Okay. So these crystal holders were betrayed by those who wanted the codes without the heart to carry them, meaning that, remember I said your heart space is where you carry this crystal. Not everybody has an open enough heart to carry this energy. And since they were disconnected from their oversoul stream, they didn't have access to their heart chakra because they don't see their heart chakra as being useful. They close it off completely. Because why do I need to love and have compassion and forgive people? You know, they hurt people is what they are. They hurt people, and hurt people hurt people. Okay. Many of them went underground, the crystal holders, literally and energetically, meaning that they hid their light, they veiled their power, or they forgot it all together as a form of protection. Some of the fear that we feel in our throat, right? Or in our, like right before we have to speak about our truth, or our womb, or our dreams is not weakness, it's memory of being hunted for what you now hold again. So in today's time, some people are still being hunted, or some of these crystal holders are still being hunted, but not in the same way. And now it's more subtle, it's energetic, and it's in systematic ways, meaning that energetic interference, especially around voice, truth, or creative expression, dreamtime intrusions from entities who try to access Stargate memory. I told you about that. I don't know if this is a memory or if this was a attack, but I was in this chamber, or I was in this long hallway, and I walked through the hallway, and part of the floor was like concrete, and the other part was like this aqua crystal, marine crystal. And whoever these two beings were trying to get me to step onto the crystal, and I knew that if I stepped on the crystal, it was going to project my consciousness into another timeline. And so I was distracting them. Like I was like, oh no, for some reason we were in a car, and I'm like, you can't drive your car onto the crystal, it's going to break. Like I'm distracting them. And then there's a big boom outside, and we go to like run to see what it is. And it's like one of those doors that you have at like a swimming pool, where it still has like the pushy thing for you to go out, but it's like, I don't know how to explain it. And then they say, oh no, it's Matumbu, who is a guardian of sovereignty and free will. And when he turns around and looks at me, his eyes are like really, really green. I knew him. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like time stopped, time bended. It's like time was no longer linear. It was like one of those scenes in a movie where you see your crush and it's just like they start moving in slow fucking motion. That, and then I ran for my fucking life. And I don't know if he caught me because I woke up before I got caught. Okay. So a lot of we would have dream intrusions because they're trying to get us to lead them to soul memory because they cannot get it from themselves. So what they'll do is project things into our mind to get keys and codes and things like that. Okay. Also they'll make us feel drained or distorted when we speak or step into visibility. For example, if you are a person who is going on your spiritual journey and you have a spiritual teacher, this happened to me, but this also happened to one of my mentees. So I want to talk about it a little bit. When I first went on my spiritual journey, I had a psychic mentor, right? And she didn't really do much. She wasn't teaching me nothing. She was just calling people, and I was just doing readings, right? But then I went into this spiritual group, spiritual class, and it had like 3 months left, and we started doing mediumship. But she also was teaching me something. There was like an educational component to it, and she also was teaching me to discern between the voice and that actually belongs to me in my head and energetic interference. And when she started to do that, I all of a sudden would get really dizzy in the classes, and I would feel like my head would go into a fog, and it's like I almost couldn't pay attention. And then I would get this voice in my head that would start attacking her, meaning like it was like it would make me like paranoid when it came to her and not be able to trust her and like things like that. And so I could feel it, I don't know, creeping up on me. Like it was like I could feel it in the top of my head, like I was getting pressure in the top of my head. I would get dizzy, I would get foggy, I would get all these things. And so what I did is I reached out to the teacher, even though I was having these thoughts that I could not trust her. I reached out to her and I told her, and she's like, "Thank you for telling me," or whatever. She removed it off of me immediately. It was an energetic attachment, and energetic attachments hide in the shadows. And what they do is they mimic the voice inside of your head, and so they make it seem like you're having this thought that you're not having. They're telling you what the thought is, but because you don't have discernment over what voice is happening, is able to do that. So that's why a lot of times y'all in an internal conflict with yourself. Is not you being in an internal conflict with yourself. A lot of times you're in an internal conflict. Your voice comes out when this distortion is talking to you and you know that something is wrong. And so you're like, no, I shouldn't do that. Well, maybe I should. And sometimes you collapse and sometimes you give into it, but sometimes you fight and you don't. And you say, no, I don't think that's right. I'm not doing that. A lot of times it's that energetic interference that has attached itself to you. And for a lot of women, it's attached to your throat. It's attached to your womb. It's attached to your heart because those things have been traumatized, either through your lineage, through your bloodline, or in this lifetime, right? So I often see things there, but I also see things on people's solar plexus because it's the most important and most easily aligned of all the chakras. It directs your will, meaning your ability to make conscious decisions. So I see it hooks and stuff there as well. Okay. So when you get a spiritual leader or somebody who is starting to help you to be able to discern between the voices, you get that energy that makes you really paranoid, really have trust issues and all that thing. And it's not telling you anything different than you already feel for other people. It's just amplifying it for that person that's trying to help you because they activated stuff in you that's helping you to detach from that energy so that energy becomes more potent. Okay. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because, again, like I said, these energies today will make you feel drained and also distorted when you speak your truth or you're stepping into visibility, meaning that you are starting to realize what your truth is. You're starting to be able to discern what's you and what's that voice. Okay. Also, they can surround you in chaos and confusion or delays when you're activating your purpose, especially, like I said, when you find a spiritual teacher or when you start to live in your truth and you start living your life unapologetically. And you don't care about how people feel about that around you. So it's important that you know that the timeline has shifted, and that's why they can't use the same tactics that they used to use. And the field has changed. So what was once a threat is now just a test of your discernment, not survival. It is a test of your discernment, and that's why they come in through the dream time and things like that. And so you have to be conscious when you're dreaming because you're still making decisions for this life in your fucking dream realm. Okay, and that's why they try to make contact with you through your dreams by making you sign contracts or making you repeat a statement. And then sometimes I'll hear like a download coming from the sky. I don't even know how to explain this, y'all. And I'll be like, y'all don't hear that? Oh, no, hell no. And then I have to get up and say my incantations and reclaim my sovereignty and stuff like that. Or I'm saying no to things because people are trying to attach things to me or make me sign contract or whatever the fuck they be doing. Okay. So you're no longer here to be hunted, though. You are here to walk as somebody who remembers, and that cannot be undone. That cannot be unmade. It's already fucking done. It's already fucking done. Okay. Also understand, and I said this last time, we are living in two different frequencies right now because the new Earth frequency came in 2020. Okay. But it has not stabilized fully. The reason why people are remembering right now is because it's starting to stabilize more fully. Right. So there are two frequencies going at the same time, but what you got to understand is we all share the same space. So you could be living with somebody who is on a different frequency than you are on. You could be in the store with somebody who is on a different frequency than you are on. Okay. So what they do is they use media and social media because we still have visibility of that timeline. Okay. So they use media and social media to still push trauma and fear and stuff like that to re-loop you into their timeline. Okay. And so that is exactly what the orange is doing and Muskie, right? They're trying to get you to re-buy into the timeline because their time is up. So through social media, they're doing specific things, but they're not actually happening. They're pushing a bunch of false timelines and realities. And because so many people are worked up about it, you are allowed to, when you have public outrage, they can attach emotional feeders and embedded mental thought forms and different false timelines and things like that back into your environment. So you got to understand, we are sharing the space, but it does not mean you're on that frequency. You cannot fucking collapse. You cannot fold. You cannot feed into it. I'm not saying don't have awareness. It's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't have awareness. I'm just saying that you could be on a different frequency. And the more that you feed into that fear and that distortion and that helplessness, you are choosing that timeline by what you focus on. Okay. All right. So, how do you protect yourself daily? You need to claim your flame daily through words, through song, through intention. Pay attention to what you're listening to with that music. Please pay attention to what you're listening to with that music. There's a time and a place. Anytime that I'm working out, sometimes I like to listen to, female empowerment music. That's what I like to call it. The music that's decentering men. But I speak my intention over that music before I listen to it, because as long as you speak your intention, you can do anything in moderation. You can do anything, though. You just need to speak your intention. You need to reclaim it. You need to say what the power means for you, or what it means for you. Okay. You need to seal your field with sovereignty codes, especially around your sleep and your speech. So one thing that you can say is, I am the only authority in my field. And when you say that, this seals your energy from unconscious agreements, from contracts or projections as well. And you can use this anytime that you feel like other people are trying to influence you or pull you or confuse your energy. You can also say, only truth may enter. Okay. This filters your space from false gods, from glamored energies, or from interference masked as light, meaning them false gods. Some people who are doing spiritual work are tapped into a false grid, meaning that they speak the language of divine beings. They mimic divine beings, but they're not actually divine beings. And you can see that because they usually have ego, or they're usually telling you to do it their way, or trying to control or urge you towards certain things. And a lot of times when you see them, they blur their face, or you only can see their chest. And that's how you know that they distorted. They don't want to actually be seen. Okay. And they're always going to pressure you, or this urgency, or they want you to do something fast, or they want you to be dependent on something. Those are all distortion. The love moves without force, and you have free will, and it's going to empower you to step into your power. Okay. So only truth may enter. And then when I say glamored energy, I don't know if y'all have ever met somebody who has glamour magic over them, but what will tend to happen is that you kind of dote over them in a way. It's like you will be telling yourself while you're there, or you'll have this voice in your head that's telling you that you really like this person and that you like their energy or stuff like that. But the moment that you move away from them, it's almost like you in a haze or a fog or something. And then the moment you move away from them, or you separate from them, you start to realize you don't actually feel like that about that person. I don't know how fucking else to explain this. It's almost like you in a daze while you with them. You're just like, oh, I really like this person. I like hanging out with this person. And then you get away from them and you're like, no, I actually fucking don't. That person is not a good person. Actually, glamour magic. Glamour magic is a real thing. And I feel like a lot of women use glamour magic. So you got to be careful. Okay. It's only when you separate from that energy that you can really tell the truth of the matter. And then when you separate and you figure out what the truth is, don't take your ass back over there. Okay. Because truth doesn't exist in that space. They keep pulling you into this false reality. All right. So I just want to say that because I know somebody who be doing glamour magic, and that shit was trippy to me, because I was like, what the fuck is happening? I don't actually like this person when I'm around them. When I come home, I'm just like, what the fuck? I don't understand that. What the hell? Exactly. But also you can say, I revoke all agreements made in fear, silence, or distortion across all timelines. And this actually is a reset code. It cancels spiritual contracts you don't remember making, especially made under duress in past lives or in astral state as well. You also can say, my frequency is sovereign, my flame is sealed, my voice is mine. And that is full body field alignment. Okay. It's excellent after you've done deep healing work or sessions, or when you feel like you have been cracked open. After every single session that I have with a client, I'm clearing my space and I'm reclaiming my sovereignty and I'm returning whatever is not mine. Okay. If you do spiritual work in any capacity, you have to do that. Okay. You can also say, I call back all pieces of my light. Only those that are mine, whole and healed, can exist. Okay. And you can use this for soul retrieval and for clearing other people's energy from your system. Understand that sovereignty means that you carry only what is yours. Okay, that's what sovereignty is about. You carry only what is yours, not distortion, not interference, not you only care what's authentic to you. And another thing that you can say is, as I speak, so it is. So it is. You'll often see in spells like hoodoo spells or voodoo spells, they always ended in so be it, and so mote it be, so it is, things like that. And the reason being is because that specific statement is crystalline coded. Okay. So, as I speak, so it is. By my flame, I am known. Okay, that's the full statement. As I speak, so it is. By my flame, I am known. This awakens the crystalline coding in your voice. Say this before you do any ritual, before you share any information, or any time that you're about to speak your truth. Okay. There are also sealing gestures, meaning that you can draw a circle of light around your body physically or in your mind's eye. You can place a hand on your heart or your womb, which are sealing gestures. Like that's how you seal your field in inner coherence, all the things. Or you can speak the code while breathing into your spine or your flame center. And end it with the way that you seal things, the way that I seal things is, this is my temple, I am sovereign, so it is. This is my temple, I am sovereign, so it is. Okay. Use discernment around who you share your energy with. Not everyone is ready for your frequency too. That's another thing you need to understand. Not everybody is ready for your frequency. So sealing your field helps you to use discernment, okay, and where you share your frequency. And you also can call on Amara or the Flame Council or your Oversoul for protection as well. Okay, but always say in a truest essence, whoever you call on, even if you or calling on any of the old gods or Isis or any of those, as long as you're at the right resonance and you come humbly, you're going to tap into the right frequency. But I always say in its truest essence. Okay. So that's how you protect yourself from that distortion and that betrayal and stuff that's happening right now. Now, how long before the fall did Amara warn them? She warned them roughly 500 to 700 years before the final collapse. Okay, so Amara began sensing major disruptions in the crystalline grids and an imbalance in the flame lines. Because remember, I told you she got up in the morning and she would always check on Earth. She would always, re-anchor things into Earth's grid and stuff like that. So she noticed it way before most people because that was a part of her function, right? The temple harmonics began to falter. Stargate usage became ego-driven rather than sacred, and the masculine councils began to silence the feminine flame. Okay, artificial frequencies and control systems crept into technology that was once pure. Okay, so these are things that still exist today, and that's why we got to talk about it, because every single thing that happened there happens in our distorted reality right now. Okay, so it helps to have awareness of what is happening, because it's not that these people are magicians and they have wands. That's not fucking true. They have technology. Okay, so Amara didn't see the collapse as a date. She felt it as like a fraying of the light and a slow unraveling of what had once been whole. Okay, she could see that it was becoming unwhole. It was becoming fractured, right? And so the warning for her looked like, she warned people through sacred tones, and also dream messages that were sent through the water grid, quiet gatherings with other flame bearers to restore codes, meaning like she started doing like collective healing and stuff like that, because again, we are stronger together, whether we know it or not. Soft refusal to participate in distorted ceremonies, meaning like they were holding their own ceremonies, their own rituals, and she would refuse to be a part of that. Okay. Planting memory seeds in those who still carried integrity, meaning like she was planting memory in people who she knew that she could trust. Okay. She even tried to re-anchor the rose flame into the new temples. She even tried to re-anchor the rose flame into new temples that were further from the main Atlantean centers. But by then, many had already turned away from the inner flame. Okay. So some people did listen to her, and that was usually the circle of priestesses who are now reincarnating on Earth, around Earth, the 144,000. It's not going to be all, it's not all female, meaning like gendered female. A lot of people are non-binary energies as well, because a lot of our gender in the way that we describe it, or gender in the way that we experience it on Earth, is not fluid, and it's supposed to be fluid. It's supposed to exist on a spectrum. It's not supposed to be that you only like this gender likes that gender like, it's not supposed to be that. It's supposed to be fluid. Okay. But the reason why that's a whole other story. Okay. So a lot of people are remembering right now, and a lot of people fled as well. Certain grid keepers withdrew into the mountains and inner earth tunnels, which are underneath the mountains. A lot of these mountains are sacred entrance points. And then some Atlantean children were taken into the Venetian and Lemurian sanctuaries to preserve their frequency. So some of the kids were protected. Now, I do want to say that, you know how they say that a mountain forms from the tectonic plates and then the land just rises up? Have y'all ever seen that happen? Have y'all ever seen, like, do we have any new mountains? I know we got some islands that come from underneath the water, but I ain't never seen no mountain just sprout up. So yeah, anyways. Now, even though they did all these things, people were going into hiding, all of these things. The dormant currents driven by power, control, and false light ignored or dismissed her. Okay. And some even accused her of betrayal because she was withholding advanced technology. And they said that she was too soft to lead. So a lot of them things that we see in movies is an echo of Amara's timeline. Also, because of this, she stepped back. She didn't retreat or anything like that, but she stepped back out of guardianship because she was going to protect the flame regardless. Okay. She vowed that if they could not hear her voice now, she will bury it in the water so that one day when the earth was ready, her daughters would find it again. Okay. Which is priestess lines, non-binary energy, whatever. So how does she defend herself? Right. And we talked about this before, and I told y'all basically why she chose to defend herself in the way that she did was because of free will. And she felt like that we created Atlantis to experience polarity. And there was always understanding that we might fall deep into ego and distortion and separation and things like that. And she did her best. Like, that's why she was there. It's because she was holding the frequency and the harmonics, and she was making sure that she was with her whole being sending out the appropriate signals and things like that. And she knew that it might happen. And her whole purpose of her being there was that she was going to hold the frequency until she couldn't anymore. And then there was a protocol put in place with how she was going to behave if the fall did happen. And that's exactly what she did. Okay. Because we do have free will. We get to choose. And that's something that we wanted to explore. And we learned a lot through the exploration of trauma and separation and judgment and comparison and all of those things. We learned a lot through contrast. But now Earth is trying to evolve in a different direction because she has tapped out in that. She did as much as she could do. Okay. So she didn't defend herself. Amara didn't defend herself in like how we would defend ourselves. She did not use weapons or raise her voice or anything like that. She held frequencies so powerful, so pure, so stabilizing that in a time of distortion and betrayal, her silence became her shield and her song became her sword. Hold on. Somebody trying to fuck with my heart space. Give me 1 second, y'all. I'm gonna say my incantation before I got on here. I got to be quicker than that. All right. So her power was subtle, but it was potent. And what I mean by that is that she embodied the rose flame, and the rose flame was a frequency of divine feminine wisdom, unconditional love, and crystalline authority. But as Atlantis began to shift into polarity and misuse of power and lean towards ego-driven knowledge, she became a target. She became a target, and some people feared her because She held no allegiance to control systems, right? And others desired her because her voice was a key to open stargates. And some tried to silence her, believing the flame should be used for domination and not remembrance, which y'all are fucking insane. Who fucking decides domination? But anyways, people who have shut off their access to their heart. But Amara was not weak, though. She was deeply aligned with Source. She refused to fight distortion with distortion, because then you're creating the very thing that you're trying to stop from being created, right? Which is why you can't fight fire with fire. It can't be an eye for an eye, because you're just mirroring them instead of rising above. And you know what? I struggle with this a little bit because, like I said in our previous episodes, when I was channeling Amara, girl, why the hell she could stop it. Her energy was so fucking powerful. She could stop it, but she didn't, because she believed in free will and she made a vow of free will. You know, I was birthed out of her regret and her wanting to do it a different way. So I am a lot more, I was one of those people who I didn't really fight back a lot when I was a kid. I feel like I took a lot until one day I said nobody was going to save me, and I started tearing shit up. You know? And so I had to realize that that's not really me. And I was just really angry and really hurt, and I wanted to be seen, and I wanted to, I felt like I was constantly misunderstood and shit like that. And so it took me a second to come back into my body, because I was on a rampage to, like, I had literally took on a personality. I said in my head, y'all got me fucked up. Y'all not about to play with me. And so I went through this stage of fighting all the time. In college, my coach had to sit me down and tell me that I could not hit everybody that called me the B word. And I was determined to prove him wrong. Not a good look. Glad I came back to myself, because I've never really been that person. I feel like I had to be that person to survive. And I think a lot of us fall into distortion in that way. And a lot of us have been subjected to a lot of that shit. And it's the environment that we fucking live in. We fighting for our fucking life out here, you know? So don't feel bad if you have not been perfect, because this path is not a path of perfection. It's about resonance. It's about authenticity, you know, and authenticity is living in your truth. And that's my truth. I used to tear shit up. You know, I'm glad that I don't anymore. You know, the last fight I got into it, I literally yelled at the ground, was like, look what you made me do. Like, in true narcissistic fashion. So really proud of that. But in my defense, she did muff me. So I don't know why the fuck you would do that. But, you know. Anyways, okay. So you cannot fight distortion with distortion, basically. Okay. So she defended herself through frequency mastery. So when she was confronted, some things that she would do is she would shift the entire resonance field to disarm the lower vibrations. She would use sound, geometry, and presence to dissolve interference. She would activate mirror shields and energetic fields that return distortion to its original source. And she would also retreat into inner earth portals or crystalline chambers when protection was needed. Okay. She did not fight. She held. She defended not by attacking, but by refusing to lower her frequency, even when she was betrayed, and she was betrayed a lot. Okay. Again, a lot of times by people that she taught, people that she brought up. Okay. So some who once stood in her temple turned against her, influenced by false light beings, corrupted counsels, or fear of losing control. There were times when she had to leave sacred sites because they were overtaken. She would seal or destroy flame libraries to prevent misuse. So there's a lot of memory vaults in libraries and even underwater temples that are veiled. For example, there's one in the Bermuda Triangle, one in Antarctica, one in the Azores, one entrance to a library under the Andes, the Himalayas, etc., etc. Okay. She also would speak her truth only in the dream realms where it could not be twisted. Okay. Because she also made me realize that that the dream realm is the true reality, and that as long as you set your intention and stuff like that before you go to sleep, you won't get caught in these artificial distortion loops. And what I mean by that is when you actually go to sleep. Your astral body is always going to leave your physical body because it needs to go back to the astral plane in order for it to re-energize itself. And when it leaves your body, it moves across the ley lines, right? But the issue that we are running into, especially recently, because a lot of them can only gain access to us through our dreams, is that on these ley lines, they put soul traps and distortion loops to pull you into these specific energies, or you'll have an attachment on you that's projecting images in your head, or an astral parasite that looks like a fucking octopus attached to your astral body, whatever the fuck, right? And so they're pulling us into these different distortion loops to try to recontract with us, and sometimes to get us back in a fear state. Okay, so the dream will start off with you running for your life or whatever the fuck. And also they're snatching the dreams. I don't know how they're doing that, but sometimes I'll wake up and I'll remember exactly what it is, and within a second I can feel it being pulled or snagged or whatever the fuck. So yeah, anyways. At one point, it was said that she sung the gates shut, locking access to the crystal flame until Earth was ready again. That song was in defense, but also a sacred grief as well. There's also an Atlantean Stargate that sits in the Bermuda Triangle, and I feel like that's why they're fighting over the Gulf of Mexico, because they're trying to gain access to that Atlantean gate. But she sung it closed, and that's why I feel like I had that dream about somebody trying to steal my voice and stuff like that. So she did struggle a little bit with the weight of having to defend herself, because and it wasn't because she was powerless or anything like that. It was because she was unwilling to use power in the way that the world had begun to define it. Even though, like I said, she could have nipped all this shit in the butt. She struggled with the loneliness of holding truth others feared. She struggled with the headache of watching distortion rise, the discipline of restraint, knowing her voice could literally destroy them. But she felt like her voice was meant to heal. It was not meant to destroy. Her greatest defense was always love. And it wasn't passive love. It was fierce. It was unshakable. It was coherence. It was an unshakable coherence in the face of distortion. So a lot of us still feel remnants of this, right? Which is us feeling misunderstood or silenced for speaking from our heart, a desire to protect other people without becoming a warrior. A deep grief for a power you know but you rarely use, and a longing to find a way to hold light without collapsing or compromising your field. And if those things are you, then you may be somebody, again, who carries her codes. Okay, so that was the lesson for today. All right, we're getting back into Amara. Next time we're going to talk about the other things that she did in defense of the crystal flame, which is hiding the relics. And I'm gonna tell y'all what some of her relics did, so y'all can understand like the gravity of her power, because period, we love a powerful bad bitch. So that's basically all I have to say today. Oh, thank you, Memory. Yeah. She was amazing. It's so crazy because there's so many things that that I really, really love about Amara, that I feel like I have a lot of her qualities, because I'm like the next step or whatever in her journey. And she would not, there was a period of time where I could not hear my oversoul at all. I only could hear my higher self. And there's a difference between your oversoul and your higher self. Your oversoul is all of your timelines. It's literally the energy that created your soul spark, whereas your higher self is the God, like the version of yourself, a sixth density version of yourself that existed on another timeline, meaning like it's at a higher density than you, that just kind of look back and is just guiding you along this path in a lower timeline, right? And so I could hear my higher self, but I could not hear my oversoul. And the day that my higher self was helping me in this incarnation to get access or gain access to my oversoul. And Amara would not talk to me until I loved myself. she legitimately would not talk to me until I loved myself, until I could see the beauty in my experiences. So my higher self, in some of my meditations, would start revealing things to me about myself, especially when I was ready to hear it. She came through one time and she literally was like, feel yourself. And it was like my limbs disappeared, all of that. I asked who she was and I heard Hikati. But the reason why I feel now I understand after us having conversations was that at that time she knew that I wouldn't be scared if it was that energy because I was just doing some studying on that, right? So she came through and she scared the shit out of me. I jumped out of meditation. I said, I don't know who the fuck you are and what the fuck you are, but why is you so loud in my head? Like it literally sounded like a God was speaking in my fucking head. And so I'm like, hold up, sister girl. Don't just be popping in on me like that. You got to introduce yourself. Like, what's going on? And so I jumped out, but then I was like, no, you can't be scared. You got to go back in. So I went back into meditation and she told me to feel myself and all my limbs disappeared. And all I could feel was the pain in my body. And it was so much fucking pain. It was so much fucking pain in my body. And she was just releasing it. But I couldn't stay there very long because the energy was so high that my body started vibrating really high and I started like tingling everywhere. And so I had to get up out of there because I was not ready. But Sister Girl is very strict. She's very strict. She would not talk to me until I was able to take in more light in my body and I got out of distortion. And I started to love myself. And because she created me, meaning that when she created me perfect for what I came here to do. But because I was so out of alignment with myself, I didn't even know where that was. I was so disconnected. I was so lost. And I also had a self-love issue. I had a self-worth issue that I needed to address. And until I addressed that, she was like, girl, you're on your own. Like, you're not going to listen to me. If you don't even love yourself and you don't even see the beauty in what we have created. No, sister. Next time, you know? So, it's so important for y'all to love yourself and see the beauty in your experience because everything that you've been through in life is only moving you either closer to yourself or away from yourself. Okay. But all of it is a lesson. Always look for the lesson in situation. Don't try to figure out the why or the how or the why they do me this way and I wouldn't do that. Like, don't try to figure that shit out. Don't try to figure that shit out. Instead, what you need to figure out is what happened. What was the lesson? Right? You need to know what happened so you can look for the signs so that shit can't happen again. Okay. And then you need to look for the lesson. What is it trying to teach you? Because that's the wisdom that you need to carry forward with you. And if it was a good emotional experience, that is a yes, move towards it. That's you moving towards yourself. Anytime you have a positive emotional experience, you feel fulfilled, you've experienced intuition, bliss, excitement, joy, right? That is a yes, move towards that thing. But if you experience fear, doubt, or confusion, because confusion is a no, right? If you experience shame, guilt, embarrassment, any of the self-conscious emotions, if you, I don't know, feel apathy, pride, ego, paranoia, skepticism, right? In its lower energy, skepticism on the shadow side, which is paranoia and not being able to trust people and stuff like that. If you're experiencing that, that is a no. That is a no. You need to set a boundary. What is this trying to teach me? You set a boundary so the next time that appears, you know exactly what you're doing. You don't wait until it show up to try to figure out what the hell you're doing. The moment that you have the experience, that's when you do the reflection. That's when you say, okay, what happened here? These are the signs. Okay, these are the things that happened that I did not like. These are the things that I did like. Then you set a boundary. Next time this happens, I'm going to do this. And a boundary is always for you. A demand is for other people. You cannot control other people. You can only control you. What am I going to do? Next time, I'm going to do this. Okay? And then you move away from that thing. Anything that looks like that, that's a no for you. You've been there. You've done that. You don't need to experience that again. But you only say yes to the things that truly light your soul on fire because that is the intelligence in your body, which is the water. Okay? Soul energy lives in the water in your body. Okay? Soul energy communicates to you through water and it's telling you yes or no. And that communication is emotional energy. It's through your feeling, how things make you feel. Either they're going to make you feel good or they're going to make you feel bad. If they make you feel good, that's a yes. If they make you feel bad, that's a no. Simple. Not so simple though, because it's kind of hard because you still got temptation and you still got, most of us have a weak masculine principle because of the conditioning, because of the stuff that they put in our food and all of those things. Because a lot of us have been living unconsciously. So I say simple, but it's not really that fucking simple. You're going to have to fight for your motherfucking life. But you're capable of doing it. It's actually what you came here to do. Because life is not about you becoming anything. It's about you remembering who you are. You only can remember who you are when you start living the life that your soul came here to live, which means that if it's a good experience, yes. If it's a bad experience, no. You don't want to keep experiencing that. So why the fuck do you keep going over there? A weak masculine principle is a weak mind. It means you're easily influenced and manipulated and controlled. Where somebody who has a strong masculine principle, a strong mind, is somebody who is able to make conscious decisions for themselves. They've weakened the masculine principle, specifically, and especially in men. They planned this out. In the 1940s, I think it was the 1940s, they did a study on a bunch of rats and they put them in this enclosed space, and all the restraints that have been placed on us, the limitation in food, the limitation in all of these things, right? All of the constraints that are placed on us as a society, or us as the Black people today, now it's seeping into the white people. But that have been placed on us, they placed them on these rats, right? And what they realized is that the women, the female rats, stopped having interest in the man, and they became really, really hyper independent. You can look this up. I'm not bullshitting you. They became hyper independent, and the males started not being able to make decisions for themselves, and they started fucking each other. Yeah. So you can look that up. I'm not bullshitting you. It's actually a very interesting study. But what we're meant to do is we're supposed to make sure that our thoughts and our emotions align so we can take the appropriate action. That's the Holy Trinity they tell you about, the Mother, the Father, the Son. Okay? Your thoughts need to match your emotions, which needs to match your actions. The knowledge that you receive through your physical senses, you use your emotions to process it, to provide understanding for how you feel about that thing, and then you take the appropriate action. Okay. But knowledge or information and intuition are supposed to work together. But information is 10%, intuition is 90%. So you get the information from your environment, you use your intuition, and you sit with yourself to figure out how you feel about that. You go and consult your inner guidance, right? And then maybe you use the information for confirmation. That's the logic, that's the analysis. But the distortion came in when we became more mentally focused. And when we started living from our mind. You are not supposed to live from your mind. It's only 10% of who you are. And that's why they tell you your brain only uses 10% of its energy. Yeah, because then it keeps you locked into the left side of your brain. Your brain, your subconscious mind is 90% of who you are. 90%, which is your imagination, which is your intuition. 90% of who you are. But they got you using this 10%. Why? Because you easily controlled that way. Logic and analyzing and trying to figure out the whys for everything, science, cause distortion. Trying to find an explanation for everything. Trying to organize everything into form. We used to be more fluid, which means we were less rigid. Right? Because when you're talking about polarity consciousness, that means that only one truth exists. It's white or black. It's yes or no. It's right or wrong. It's light or darkness. There's no in between. There's no gray area. Whereas when you get into feminine energy, that's the bigger picture. You realize that between the light and darkness is everything that comes in between white and black. So you do got that gray area in the middle, and then you got all this and all that. You see the bigger picture when you live from your imagination. You're less easily manipulated when you live from your intuition. And that is why they do what they do. You're welcome. Okay, so you got to figure out how your technology works. You came here to grow, evolve, change. And since you were 5 years old, they have been pushing you towards predictability, especially with the American dream, right? We used to be nomads. We used to travel everywhere. We could be anywhere. Really, we was in a motherfucking wind. But they sold us the American dream so that you can buy a home and you can stay in one place for your entire fucking life. You can go to school in the same system for your all the way through 18, and then they offer more school and more school and more school, right? But if you don't get locked into that system, right, you go to work or you go to prison. Both of them are organized the same way. You got a lunch schedule. You got a work schedule. Yeah. And then when you retire, what do they sell you? Get a beach house. Stay on the beach. right? Every single day you get to do whatever it is that you want to do, which is usually the same fucking thing, because by the time you get past 65, you are already indoctrinated and seeked in predictability. So they make it really fucking hard for you to want to change, but that is how you're designed. Okay. When you get in new information, you take your emotions and you figure out how you feel about that information. And then you take the appropriate action. And it is okay that if you felt some way before and you learn new information, that you change your motherfucking mind. You're supposed to change your mind. You know, the whole saying of I'm still with the people that I came with. Why the fuck is you doing that? None of y'all motherfuckers grew, or are y'all growing together? I'm okay if y'all growing together. But if y'all not growing together, then why is you doing that? We have a blind sense of loyalty to people because of because of culture, right? And it's all conditioning. It is conditioning. It is conditioning. It is conditioning. It is conditioning. And it's a well-designed system. The shit works. It absolutely works. That's why they ain't changed the shit. It works. But you got to exist differently in the system, which means you need to change your mentality, the way that you think about things. You cannot think in just information, logic, analysis, and strategy. You need to move into intuition and let that be your confirmation, the information, the science, right? But intuition, pure knowingness is what that is. It's like, well, how do I know this though? But how do I know if this is true? You trust yourself. You're the most advanced piece of technology that has ever existed. All technology is built based off of you. Why the fuck is you trusting the copycat, the replica? You trust the replica more than you trust yourself. You don't need to know where. You don't need to know why. You need to trust whatever the fuck you get and then go with that. If it feels right in your bones, because you can feel truth in your bones. Your bones are crystals. You can feel truth in your body. You can feel truth in your bones. It's something you cannot escape from. When we start to feel truth, grief starts to rise up in us, right? We start to vibrate. Sometimes we get chills. Sometimes we get hair standing up on our arms. Sometimes our heart starts to radiate. Truth is felt. It is not just seen. Truth is felt. A lot of the stuff that I teach on my channel are things that I know is truth, because that's what comes through my body. And people will write me and be like, well, Tadra, where are you getting this information? From the motherfucking stars. I don't know what to tell you. From the fucking stars. From my oversoul. But people are not going to accept that in this society as a valuable source. Why? Because everything that we do got to be fact checked, right? No. We need to see it somewhere. Do you know that everything that has, and we rely our whole entire system on science, but do you know that every single scientist who came out with a truth, that eventually became the truth that we know it to be today, a lot of them were murdered when they came out with their truth, because people were just like, no, that can't be true. Oh, you're a liar. You know, we need to kill you. Something is wrong with you. Some of them had spikes put through their head while they were still alive in public, right through their head, through their tongue. Some of them were put on house arrest for 9 years by the Catholic Church. They couldn't even leave their fucking house. And those are things that we believe today to be true. But during their time, they were executed for it. Some of our greatest philosophers were executed for it. And if you don't know about our philosophers, most of them were vegetarians. Most of them lived a vegan lifestyle. Why? Because they understood that is how you bring more light into your body. And with more light comes more memory, comes more remembrance. So science, a lot of that shit is wrong. And we have proof and evidence that science can sometimes be wrong. Because we're supposed to keep evolving and growing and stuff, but we keep trying to find the one answer because we don't understand that everything exists on a spectrum. There is not one answer. We live in an infinite universe, which means there are infinite choices, infinite solutions, infinite answers. That's the consciousness you need to move towards. Everything is on a spectrum. Yes, this may be true for this specific scenario with these specific variables, but if you move one of the variables, now this is true. Now that is true. We're never going to know the answers. And that's the truth of it. We're never going to know the fucking answers. You only know the answer that's true for you at that moment in your life. But eventually it will be different, because that's what it means to grow and evolve and change. And so you got to allow yourself to, one, make mistakes, because in polarity consciousness, you learn through contrast, which means you got to see the wrong way or do the wrong way in order for you to realize that you didn't like that. But so many of us struggle with that, right? Because we're trying to be a good person or a good this or a good that, right? So we do it the wrong way, and we attach something to it. We have that emotional experience and we attach something to it. Okay, so what, you feel embarrassed. So what, you feel shame, right? But we say A plus B equals Z. Because I feel embarrassed about this or I feel shamed, I'm a shitty person. I don't have loyalty. Well, you've been loyal 1,000 times. This one time that you weren't loyal, all of a sudden you're not loyal. That's how we live our life. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You can never change the past. The only thing that you can do is be different for tomorrow. So what I would suggest is every morning that you get up, what did you like about yesterday? What didn't you like? What were you most grateful for? Sit with that. And then when you set your intentions for this up and coming day, everything that you did not like, change that shit. Because life is about refinement. You are becoming or remembering the person that you used to be. And that's done by paying attention to how things make you feel. You are allowed to change. You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to grow. You are allowed to. And you have to allow yourself to do that. And you only do that through making fucking mistakes. That's it. And a mistake is not a bad thing. It is showing you, oops, yeah, I really don't fucking like that. Whatever the negative emotion is, it's just telling you, no, I don't like that. Do it a different way. Select another option. And there are an infinite amount of options. You're never restricted. The only time you're restricted and limited is if you believe that you are. Okay, so thanks for coming to my TED Talk. That's all I have to say today. This is going to be available on YouTube right after this. I might hop on here either later today or I'm a liar. I might hop on here tomorrow at some point, maybe Friday, something like that, to do some live readings and stuff, just because I like to, wet my whistle a little bit. So I might hop on here and do that at some point. Let me make sure ain't nobody asked no questions okay. So I might hop on here and do some readings and stuff in the up and coming days. My YouTube is Big Taj with 2 J's, BIGTAJJ. This is going to be under the Spiritual Talk with Big Taj series, but all of my long form content is on YouTube, and I have a lot of long form content. I deconstruct the church, all of that shit. It's all on there. Go check it out for real. Also, services available on my website, bigtajwith2js.com. I do human design readings, which is basically telling you how your oversoul decided to embody into this reality. I do full readings. I do mommy and me readings to tell you how your energy interacts with your kids, because y'all need to learn how those kids are energetically designed so you can energetically parent them. I do mini readings. I do general life readings, which is telling you, talking to your oversoul or your soul, oversoul, higher self guides, your ancestors. Whatever it is that you need to deal with right now in this reality, I tell you what that is, and I give you advice and resources and things. Mediumship, which is talking to your past loved ones and seeing if they have messages for you and stuff like that. I also do energetic alignment strategy, which is basically giving, if you don't know how to get in alignment with your oversoul, this is a good addition to the human design reading, because then I can come up with a plan for you. And then I also have a meditation guide on there. I have the spiritual protection class, which tells you how to protect yourself energetically, teaches you energy work and stuff like that. It's 3.5 hours. So that's also on there. And I'm working on a spiritual class right now for flame bearers to prepare people who are ready to hold this information and who are ready to go down this path. And I'm also doing a shadow work class to kind of help people I'm really trying to integrate it into one class. But right now it's just so much information. I'm like, how fucking long is this class gonna be? So I'm working on a lot of different things. And human design, I'm integrating it now to incorporate soul specific language and to speak about it through the terms of the oversoul. Okay. Which has been going really, really well. People have really liked the new changes that I've been making with the human design. I'm still fully designing the entire system, but I've started incorporating what I can so far. And people have really been loving that. So I like that for me, period. If y'all want to know where my announcements and stuff happen on my Patreon, I have a group called the Soul Tribe tier. It's $5.55 a month. If you have questions while I'm doing these live sessions, you can put them in that tier. That's the only place that I answer questions because there's just too many questions coming at me at once. But in that tier, I do This Week in Astrology every single Monday. So I'll tell you what the astrological things are going to be. I let y'all ask questions. I also share some of the stuff that I'm watching. Sometimes I share rituals and stuff for y'all to do on the new moon and full moon, which today, again, is a new moon in Cancer. It is a great time for you to manifest the life that you want to live long term. Please use this energy properly and appropriately. Use water rituals and stuff like that. So I do stuff like that. And I also every week have free readings for my clients. So I'm actually going, when I hop off of here, I'm going to reach out to people in my Patreon, but also on my YouTube. My YouTube has a community section. And so I need 2 people this week to do readings for on Thursday at 2:30 p.m. PT, which is 4:30 Central, 5:30 Eastern. So I need 2 people this week. So I'm going to post them, and those are free readings by my mentees because I'm also a spiritual mentor. Just booked up right now. So that's it. I love y'all. I got a client in an hour, so I got to go eat and such. But this will be on YouTube. Okay. You are so very welcome. Thank y'all for coming. And we'll do this again next week, Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 3 Central, 4 Eastern. All right. Thank you, love.